Chapter 581, Guidance Hall. Everyone looked at the files Fujin had placed on the desk with curiosity. Fujin said, "Some time ago, Katsuhiro had come to me with a proposal. Even though his proposal had a lot of flaws, it pointed out an important flaw in our current system and also gave quite an ingenious solution." Shikaku squinted his eyes and thought, Katsuhiro. That elite jounin who has been frequently visiting his office. Others in the council knew about his visits to Fujin's office as well. It wasn't something that could be hidden. Besides, Fujin didn't particularly care about it. One of the civilian members thought Katsuhiro was working with him on a proposal. Why did he keep dropping hints that he wanted Fujin's seat if that's what he was doing? Fujin continued. The issue he pointed out was that ninjas who belong to ninja clans get guided by their seniors. Considering the varying specialities of everyone, they can get help in any area they want to. However, civilian ninjas don't have the same opportunity. Even though the jutsus are available in the library, without a proper teacher, learning the jutsus isn't easy. When one tries by himself, then mistakes can occur and injuries can happen. Even though everyone is assigned a sensei while graduating from the academy, a majority of the senseis are just ordinary chunins who aren't that knowledgeable. Even if a jounin is assigned as the sensei, he or she won't know everything. Not to mention, once their sensei dies in battle, they no longer have anyone they could ask for guidance. Everyone in the room subconsciously nodded. What Fujin said was true. Even so, most of the clan leaders raised their guards slightly. They still remembered the changes Fujin had recommended for the academy. Hiruzen had started implementing some of Fujin's recommendations. And now, Fujin was proposing something that would reduce the difference between clan ninjas and civilian ninjas even further. Though Fujin noticed it, he ignored it and continued. Katsuhiro came up with an ingenious solution to solve this issue. He suggested that we make a guidance hall in the center of the village. The basic idea is that civilian ninjas can put up requests in the guidance hall for the jutsus or techniques for which they need guidance. For instance, if someone wants to practice Fire Dragon Flame Bullet Jutsu, he or she can put up the request in the guidance hall. If a veteran civilian ninja who has mastered that jutsu wants to teach it to that ninja, then he can do so. Of course, doing it on a one-by-one basis will not be feasible. So, the guidance hall will be responsible for gathering all the requests and collating them. That way, a veteran can guide multiple youngsters at the same time. If it is implemented properly, then we could help a large number of chunins become jounins. Hiruzen was surprised. He immediately thought, not a bad idea. I had been thinking about this issue for some time as well. Unfortunately, I couldn't come up with anything. That said, there are some major flaws. As Hiruzen expected, Hayashi said, "While it sounds good on paper, creating a guidance hall in the center of the village is unfeasible. The cost that will be required to move the shops and other buildings currently there would be enormous." Inoichi added, "That's right. It might be worth several years of our budget. While the idea is good, such costs aren't something we can afford." The civilian council members immediately began calculating how they could argue against them. However, to everyone's surprise, Fujin nodded and said, "That's true. In fact, it's not just about the cost. Creating the guidance hall there will also cause Konoha to lose an excellent opportunity. It is one of the major flaws that were in Katsuhiro's proposal. Actually," Fujin suddenly stopped talking and let out a sigh of exhaustion. Hiruzen's eyes immediately twitched as everyone in the room glanced at him. He cursed, "This brat. Why is he sighing exactly like I do? I worked hard for decades, and my hair turned gray before I began using it. You think you can use it after working on just one proposal?" Katsuhiro's proposal had too many flaws. It was too idealistic as well for it to work properly. I had to work hard for weeks to fix all the flaws. I almost gave up a few times, but continued remembering how much it would benefit the village. Every single word Fujin spoke showed how exhausted he was. While speaking, his elbows were resting on the table, and his shoulders and head drooped to further emphasize his exhaustion. Thankfully, Katsuhiro wasn't in the council room. If he was, he wouldn't have been able to restrain himself from lashing out. Needless to say, no one bought Fujin's little act. However, no one could speak it out loud either. A few almost wanted to chuckle on seeing how Hiruzen was staring at him, but managed to hold themselves back. Shikaku asked, "What opportunity would we have lost?" Fujin replied, "I'll come back to it later." One of the major issues in his proposal was that there was no incentive for veteran ninjas to help the young ninjas out. While we can easily say that they should do it out of compassion, what was stopping them from doing that until now? Even though the guidance hall will provide a platform, it will still result in very limited involvement from them. In order to overcome this flaw, I decided to change the nature of the guidance hall. Now, while youngsters can go and put in requests for the jutsus they want to learn, we will also allow veteran ninjas to make an offer about the jutsus they are willing to teach. In order to incentivize them, they'll be allowed to put a price for which they will guide the youngsters. Another way of looking at this can be that veteran ninjas can treat these like missions, while the youngsters will be their clients. Since the main method of earning money is completing missions, it can create a virtuous cycle. The youngsters will be more motivated to take and complete missions, as they can use the money they earn to take their guidance, master new jutsus, and strengthen themselves. On the other hand, veteran ninjas who have semi-retired can contribute to the village in a risk-free manner. Guiding youngsters will also help them stay in shape and could reignite the fire in some of them. Of course, certain checks have to be put in place to ensure that no one misuses the system. Every veteran trainer who wants to teach has to first prove that they can perform the jutsus he or she wants to teach properly and have adequate knowledge of the same. This task can be left to the Anbu to ensure that there is no monkey business. We will also need to maintain a feedback system where we can ask the youngsters how effective the guidance was. We could go a step further and inspect how well they can perform the jutsu. That could allow us to rate the ninjas who guide the youngsters, allowing them to choose the appropriate guide, and will also motivate the veteran ninjas to give their best. The techniques that they teach will have to be monitored as well. I'm sure we can all agree that secret techniques and forbidden jutsus shouldn't be taught through the guidance hall. In addition, we will also have to put limits on the amount of money they charge and the number of youngsters they can teach at the same time. This will ensure that no one gets too greedy. After all, the guidance hall is for guiding the youngsters and not to make a fortune. Fujin's words made all the ninjas in the room fall into thought. Some were trying to find any flaws in his idea. After a couple of minutes, everyone in the room was left impressed. There was nothing they could pick out. Unlike Katsuhiro, Fujin's idea was flawless. Of course, that didn't mean that he would have everyone's support. Hiruzen said, "That is very well thought. I agree with these methods. Continue." Fujin nodded and said, "The second major flaw is restricting the guidance hall to just civilian ninjas. While it is true that currently civilian ninjas don't get much guidance, that's no reason to keep the clan ninjas out. While the clans represented by the people in this room are relatively well off, there are several clans that are too small due to the losses they took in previous wars. They will benefit from the guidance hall as well. Even the larger clans can benefit. For example, Fujin gazed towards Hayashi and continued, I have never met any Hyuga clan ninja who knows any taijutsu other than Gentle Fist. So if any Hyuga clan youngster wanted to pursue any other form of taijutsu, then the guidance hall would be a great help. Since Hayashi was the first one to speak, Fujin decided to target him. He continued, besides, there could be other things that ninjas in your respective clans don't know. Or even if they know, they might not know it as well as someone who has devoted a long time to mastering that particular technique. So, even the ninjas from your clans can benefit. That's why I changed the proposal to make the guidance hall open to every Konoha ninja irrespective of their background. Chapter 582, A New Economic Center. Fujin's words caused the clan leaders to lower their guards slightly. Just like the changes he recommended to the academy, Fujin hadn't excluded the clans from his proposal. Even so, there was no doubt that his proposal would benefit the civilian ninjas a lot more. It would contribute a lot to decreasing the gap between clan and civilian ninjas. It would decrease the political power the clans held with time. Shikaku thought, not bad. He has included us as well. Due to this, rejecting this proposal would cause resentment to form among our ninjas against us. After all, this proposal would help them as well, not to mention the thousands of civilian ninjas who will resent us for blocking this proposal. Unless there is a major flaw, Fujin's proposal can't be stopped. Seeing that no one was saying anything, Fujin continued, "As for the opportunity, it is rather simple. If the guidance hall is successful, it'll result in several ninjas visiting there on a daily basis. It might become the second most busy building in the village after the Hokage building. Though creating such a building in the center of the village might be the first idea for everyone's convenience, it will cause us to lose a good opportunity. Right now, the village is very crowded. More and more houses are being constructed on the outskirts on a daily basis. However, every major economic activity happens near the center of the village, forcing everyone to try to get a home closer to the center of the village. We can use the guidance hall to create a new economic center in the village. Instead of the center, the guidance hall will be constructed on the outskirts of the village, at a place where there is nothing around. Since a lot of people will visit it daily, it'll provide the village with an opportunity to create another economic center around the guidance hall. New shops and businesses can open up around it. Once these activities reach a certain level, residential places can also be constructed close to the guidance hall so that people can stay there. It'll relieve the pressure on the village as the people who work there will choose to live around there. I'm sure all of you have got the idea. All of you should know more about economics than me." It was as Fujin had said. Everyone in the room had already begun imagining ways to increase the income of their respective clans and families by expanding their businesses to the guidance hall. Combined with the fact that their ninjas would benefit as well, and that stopping this proposal would be very difficult, everyone began thinking about the maximum amount of benefits they could gain instead of thinking about ways to stop the proposal. Fujin sighed internally while thinking, "It's all about the benefits. Oh well, I can't complain either, as that'd be rather hypocritical of me." Hamura asked, "Did you choose the location of the guidance hall?" Fujin nodded and opened one of the files to a page that had the map of the village and pointed towards a marking he had made. As soon as he did so, a strange expression appeared on everyone's face. That included Hiruzen as well. He looked towards Fujin and wondered, since when did this kid become so selfless? Is he scheming something? Did he do something in the dark that'll benefit him somehow? The other clan leaders looked at him as well. Inoichi thought, "I was sure that he would put the guidance hall close to his new compounds. That way, the prices of his compound would have skyrocketed. It would also increase his influence tremendously, as everyone would be reminded that it was he who started the guidance hall whenever they saw his compound. It would also allow the civilian ninjas to approach him more easily. However, why did he choose a location that is almost at the other end of the village? That doesn't make any sense." Hayashi wondered, there haven't been any major transactions in the village recently. Has he bought lands close to that area through proxies? That could help him earn a lot. Shibai decided, we need to properly inspect the land around the site first. It'll be a good opportunity to get a lot of profits. It wouldn't do good if only one person or force gains from it. Every single person in the room had similar thoughts. As someone who proposed it, it was a no-brainer that Fujin should have taken advantage of it. However, there was nothing to see in the open. As a result, they began wondering whether Fujin had played any hands in the dark. Seeing their expressions, Fujin could easily anticipate their thoughts. He thought, even though making it close to my house can increase the value of my land, what use is that to me? If anything, it'll make future expansion more difficult as everyone will rush to buy all available land. It'll also attract a lot of crowds close to my place, allowing perfect cover for others to spy on my compound. It'll be troublesome. As for earning money, I could have used this opportunity to earn a few 100 million or perhaps even over 1 billion ryo. However, I don't really need any money. There are so many nice gentlemen in this world who are extremely willing to aid me whenever I need help. They can easily donate a few billion ryo to my just cause and willingly work hard if I need more. So why should I even bother competing with the clans? That said, since they weren't on board with my noble idea until I shared benefits, you guys shouldn't dream about earning money through my idea either. Fujin's eyes moved towards Hiruzen, who immediately noticed it. Hiruzen immediately got on guard while thinking my suspicions were right. That's the look he gives me whenever he wants to ask for something unreasonable. What is he going to ask this time? Having dealt with Fujin for years, Hiruzen was very sensitive towards any changes in his mood and expression. Thankfully for him, this time his instincts were wrong. Instead, Fujin had a rather great gift for him. In the council room, everyone was left thoroughly confused by Fujin's choice. Each one had their own speculations based on their personalities and their impression of Fujin, and were calculating how their respective forces could get an advantage. Seeing everyone in deep thought, Fujin said, "Well, that's all I have to say. Read the proposals and let me know if there are any errors or if something can be improved." He pushed the files in front of him towards the other council members. A file appeared in front of each council member. Everyone opened the files and began going through it. Needless to say, there weren't any flaws in the proposal. Katsuhiro had modified the proposal 7 times. All errors had been removed by him. Fujin had several of his clones inspect the proposal as well to ensure that he hadn't missed anything after he made the changes. In a few minutes, everyone had roughly read through the proposal and noted the important points. Koharu said, "You have done a great job, Fujin. We will inspect the proposal and put it to vote in a week." Everyone subconsciously agreed with her. However, before anyone could do so in words, Fujin asked, "Why wait a week?" Koharu answered, "This is something that will have a great impact on the village. We can't afford to make any mistakes here. A week will be needed for everyone to go through the proposal and ensure that everything is right. It will also provide an opportunity for newer ideas that could be incorporated into the proposal." Fujin replied, There is no reason why everyone can't read through the proposal properly right now. If there are any changes that are recommended, we could conduct another meeting to make the changes. However, we should vote on finalizing this proposal before this meeting ends." Fujin's insistence on getting the voting done right then surprised the room again. Seeing his behavior, everyone in the room, including Hiruzen and Shikaku, thought, "Looks like he has made arrangements to earn a fortune." Senju Hiramasa shook his head while thinking, "While it is good to get gains for yourself, you should learn to share the pie with everyone. Otherwise, everyone will oppose you. In the end, you might not get anything." Not wanting everyone to gang up on Fujin, Hiruzen said, "Fujin, there is no need to rush through such things. A proposal like this has to be properly analyzed." Fujin replied, "While I understand that, the reason I'm pushing for it to be done now is due to the nature of this proposal, or rather the economic and financial aspect of it. Once the site of the guidance hall is made public, the prices of land around that site will skyrocket. Most of the landowners will refuse to sell and will wait for it to inflate due to the demand. It might increase the cost of this proposal significantly, and it will definitely slow down the economic development that should happen around the guidance hall." Once again, the entire room was surprised. What had been just on their minds had been spoken by none other than Fujin. Even Hiruzen was lost for words and wondered what exactly Fujin was thinking. Fujin activated another seal on his bracer, and another file appeared in front of him. Everyone curiously looked towards it and wondered what it contained. Chapter 583, Hiruzen's Joy. As everyone was looking at the new file, Fujin said, "This file consists of the land deeds to all the open lands at the chosen location and around it. I represented the village and made deals with every landowner in and around that area in the last couple of days. The prices agreed upon are as per current land rates, and only Lord Hawkage's signature is left to complete these dealings. If this proposal is voted on and agreed upon in this meeting, then we could complete these deals today as well before the details are leaked to the public. It'll help us save a lot of money. It can even help us raise money by selling the land in the future at the right time, striking a proper balance between profits for the village and development around the guidance hall. If we don't, and these guys come to know of my proposal, then they will want to renege on my terms, as the deals won't be finalized until the council approves of the proposal for obvious reasons. Silence engulfed the council room once again. This time, it was absolute silence. Every single one was staring at Fujin with a stunned expression. Fujin had done something that not a single one of them had thought of. Except for one person, everyone looked at Fujin as if he had just snatched the food from their hands, just as they were about to eat it. The fact that Fujin was the one to put the food in their hand didn't make it any easier to digest. As for the only person who wasn't thinking that he was looking at Fujin with his eyes full of disbelief, Hiruzen still couldn't believe it. He thought, is that real? Did he just do that? Did Fujin do something that would actually benefit me? Having always been on the losing end due to Fujin's antics, Hiruzen couldn't believe that it was real. Even when he had some gains, he'd be forced to compensate in some other manner. For instance, when he won 120 million ryo by betting on Fujin in the Chunin exam, Fujin immediately made him get the swords he wanted and also made him spend several weeks teaching the wind vacuum technique to Fujin. However, just now, Fujin had given him something that could allow the village to gain hundreds of millions of ryo with little effort. Seeing that Fujin didn't suddenly say something that would cost him a kidney, Hiruzen almost wanted to cry tears of joy. He thought, finally, my years of investment and hard work have paid off. First the puppets and now this. I don't remember the last time I was so happy. Even though Fujin noticed that Hiruzen was pleased, he didn't know how pleased Hiruzen was. If he could read Hiruzen's thoughts, he would have definitely tried his luck and asked for the Edo Tensei Jutsu. Hiruzen's blissful state was broken when one of the civilian council members said, I think it'll be better if we wait unt. He was mercilessly cut off by Hiruzen, who said, You are right, Fujin. You have done a great job. We will analyze the proposal right now. The meeting will end only after we have voted. If any corrections are needed, we will make them later. The civilian council member who was speaking just looked awkwardly at Hiruzen. He wanted to speak before Hiruzen did, but never expected to be cut off so harshly and be completely ignored. Everyone else who planned on taking advantage of the situation just sighed and gave up. Trying to take away benefits from Fujin and trying to do the same against Hiruzen were trying to take away benefits from Fujin and trying to do the same against Hiruzen were two completely different things. Since Fujin had handed everything to Hiruzen on a silver platter, there was no way Hiruzen would share it with anyone else. Of course, it was the village that would be gaining and not the Sarutobi clan. Hence, no one tried to argue any further and just began reading the proposal thoroughly while lost in their own thoughts. The civilian council member who had opened his mouth cursed, "This dumb kid. Why did he give everything to the village? Couldn't he have just claimed some benefits and left the rest for us? Wouldn't everyone be happy then?" At the same time, Senju Hiramasa wondered, did he do so due to his naivety? Or did he do this intentionally? But why would he refuse to curry favor with everyone in the council? Everyone would have been grateful to him for the opportunity. Then again, we already owe him a favor for taking down Danzo, Shikaku, who was the one who knew Fujin most clearly out of anyone in the room other than Hiruzen, analyzed, no, Fujin isn't naive. Currying favor with everyone else would have been more beneficial for him than just giving all benefits to the Hokage. After all, the Sarutobi clan would have benefited as well. Seeing Hokage's eyes, I'd say he didn't expect it either. So, he didn't influence Fujin to do this. I guess that just leaves two possibilities. I know that Hawkage has been helping him with his training. The wind vacuum technique, which he is known for, comes from him as well. It might be his way of thanking him. Or, Shikaku glanced at Fujin and thought, or he felt that the council members who he gave such a chance wouldn't be thankful. Instead, several could have acted together to get as many benefits as they could, leaving him with very little. It could have also resulted in others seeing him as a soft target when political plays were concerned. After all, he has no experience in these matters. From that perspective, his move is near perfect. After all, he has made a major contribution to the village, be it economically or militarily. Once the news spreads, almost every ninja in the village will be grateful to him. Though I guess Katsuhiro deserves some credit as well. Now that I think about it, his involvement is quite surprising. I didn't ever see him as the type of guy who would come up with something like this. Hiruzen had a similar thought. Even though he was joyous due to Fujin's gift, what had given him joy wasn't the money Konoha would earn, but rather the fact that it was Fujin doing something beneficial for him. While thinking about that, he inevitably thought about Katsuhiro and soon felt the same as Shikaku. Hiruzen wondered, that's right, I almost overlooked this. Since when did Katsuhiro begin coming up with such good ideas? In the 40 years he has been a ninja, he has never given any such suggestions. Hiruzen immediately became suspicious. Soon, his eyes widened before going back to normal size. He thought, I nearly forgot. The Anbu ninjas I had placed to keep an eye on Root reported Katsuhiro visiting Root a couple of times after Danzo was removed from the council. If he is involved with Danzo, then it might be possible that this idea came from Danzo and not Katsuhiro. That is far more plausible. However, why would Danzo make Katsuhiro help Fujin after what happened, knowing his old friend? Hiruzen immediately smelled a scheme. Thoughts ran through his mind. In just a couple of minutes, and while he was going through the proposal, he figured out most of Danzo's plan. He glanced towards Fujin and thought, this was a trap for Fujin. Danzo likely expected him to steal credit. Even if he didn't, the proposal would have made the clan leaders see Fujin as a threat. However, Fujin didn't steal the credit. Seeing his nature, that wasn't surprising. There are a lot of things that he can take credit for, but he instead prefers to keep them a secret. And thanks to the changes he made to Katsuhiro's proposal, the clan leaders don't see it as much of a threat as they would have otherwise. Fujin avoided one trap due to his nature and nullified another due to his diligence. That's a relief. However, he is oblivious to these schemes. For Danzo to do something like this, it'll only mean one thing. He wants to replace Fujin with Katsuhiro on the council. If my guess is right, he will now try to give the credit for the proposal to Katsuhiro, making the ninjas grateful to him instead of Fujin. That might give him just enough capital to threaten Fujin's seat. HMPH, I'll strike first. Let me see what you'll try then. Danzo, even though Hiruzen's guesses were accurate, he didn't know that Danzo had stopped supporting Katsuhiro after the incident, as he wouldn't be able to use the council to make a comeback. Katsuhiro was planning on progressing the plan by himself. As a result, Katsuhiro would soon find himself competing against a Hiruzen who thought that he was facing Danzo. Not to mention, Fujin was unaware of the fact that Hiruzen had connected the dots, nor was he aware of whether Danzo was still helping Katsuhiro or not. Hence, he had his own plans which he would be putting into motion very soon after the meeting ended. Katsuhiro, who had just spent 2 miserable months being forced to correct the proposal again and again, was unaware of the misery that still awaited him. Chapter 584, Reward Fujin. The council went through the proposal carefully, inspecting every single point and seeing whether they could find any flaws or any scope for improvements that might help them delay the proposal a bit. Unfortunately for them, there were no flaws, and making any improvements would require a lot of time to ponder. It wasn't something they could come up with on the spot. In around an hour, everyone had gone through the proposal a couple of times. Seeing that everyone was done reading, Hiruzen asked, "Does anyone have anything to add to it?" No one said anything. Hiruzen looked around once before saying, "In that case, let's put it to vote. All those in favor, raise your hands." After Danzo was removed from the council, the number of people in the council had gone back to 16, as it was before Fujin became a part of the council. It meant that if there was a tie, Hiruzen would get an additional vote for the tiebreaker. In addition, the clan leaders only had 7 out of the 16 seats, meaning that they were in the minority. 9 votes would be needed to fail the proposal. As the one who put forth the proposal, Fujin raised his hand. Hiruzen raised his hand, as well as the idea was extremely beneficial for the village, no matter how he looked at it. Koharu and Hamura supported it for the same reason and raised their hands. Apart from these 4, there were 5 civilian council members. Each of them was bitter that Fujin had taken away a chance to earn millions from them. However, the proposal was for the benefit of the civilian population, as even the ones who weren't ninjas wanted their children to become one. If they dared to vote against it, they would be booted out of the council within days. None of them dared to risk that, and all 5 raised their hands. Among the clan leaders, Senju Hiramasa was the first one to raise his hand. In fact, he was even quicker than the elders, and raised it alongside Fujin and Hiruzen. He was the only clan leader who didn't have any reservations about Fujin's proposal, and would have wholeheartedly lobbied for it if Fujin didn't have enough support. Shikaku and Choza didn't particularly care much about the proposal, and raised their hands as well. The remaining 4 clan leaders had reservations, but seeing that voting against them would be pointless, they raised their hands as well. As a result, Fujin's first official proposal was unanimously passed. Hiruzen smiled and said, "A unanimous vote after a long time. I suppose that shows how important the guidance hall will be for our village. Great work, Fujin. I'm glad that we decided to induct you into the council." Fujin nodded while commenting, "Of course you are, you old fox. What's the use of words? Just ask me what reward I would like." Since joining the council, Fujin had gotten rid of Danzo's influence and gave 2 ways to strengthen our village. He also gave a nice little boost to the village's finances and economy. Any leader would be pleased. Unfortunately for Fujin, Hiruzen had become too smart to say anything in regards to that. He turned his eyes back to the council and said, "I have checked the land deeds as well. They are properly documented and priced. I will sign them now. The construction of the guidance hall will begin immediately. The funds will be assigned within a couple of days, and this project will be given the highest priority." Everyone agreed. Hiruzen signed the land deeds. Since no one had any other proposal, the meeting finally ended and everyone dispersed. Hiruzen returned to his office. Even though he had signed the papers, he still had some work to do, such as actually paying the ones who were selling the land. He quickly got to work and dispatched his subordinates to bring them to the office while he ran the numbers. After analyzing everything, a smile appeared on Hiruzen's face. He thought, the village will need to spend around 60 million ryo to purchase the land. Building the hall and some surrounding infrastructure will require another 40 to 50 million ryo. However, the village will earn at least 300 million ryo by reselling the lands at the appropriate time. If I want to be aggressive and time them appropriately, then it could even exceed 1.2 billion ryo. That said, there is no need to do so. It's more beneficial for the village to focus on economic activity. In time, the returns would be much higher due to that. Not to mention, the people will be more happy. Hiruzen let out a sigh of satisfaction while thinking, I didn't think that greedy brat would give me such a nice gift. I was almost tempted to let him choose a reward. Thankfully, I managed to resist the urge after remembering what happened every time I said those words. Considering his current level, he'll likely directly ask for the scroll of the Forbidden Seals. However, it is better if he doesn't come into contact with unethical jutsus just yet. I don't want to repeat the same mistake I made with Orochimaru. I'll wait till Fujin matures sufficiently before allowing him access to jutsus like Edo Tensei. It'll ensure that he doesn't get influenced by them at a young age. While Hiruzen had been quite liberal in teaching Fujin jutsus so far, he was adamant against teaching Fujin any jutsus that could lead him down the dark path. He decided to wait until a few wars took place and see how the wars would impact his personality before deciding whether to allow him access to such jutsus. Hiruzen thought, even though I can't reward him directly, it doesn't mean that I can't do anything for him. A clone appeared next to Hiruzen and immediately disappeared from the office. He entered the Anbu headquarters under the office and entered Eagle's office. Eagle was surprised to see his father so suddenly and asked, "Did something happen?" Hiruzen's clone answered, "Well, nothing very serious. Anyway, listen carefully." Hiruzen's clone informed him about the guidance hall proposal that Fujin had proposed and explained to them all its features and advantages. Eagle was surprised to hear everything. He said, "I never have heard of anything like this. This will be very helpful to the village. Even beyond increasing the strength of the youngsters, it'll also improve the relationship between the younger and the older generation. The benefits will be endless." Hiruzen's clone nodded and said, "I know. That is why the proposal was accepted unanimously. However, there is a hidden play. I need you to take care of it." Eagle's expression became peculiar upon hearing that Hiruzen wanted to suppress Katsuhiro, from whom the idea had originated. He became serious after hearing a possible link between him and Danzo, and what Hiruzen speculated was Danzo's plan to replace Fujin with Katsuhiro. He sighed and said, "Elder Danzo never gives up, does he? I understand. I'll ensure that the village knows the truth." Hiruzen's clone smiled and said, "Good, I'll leave it to you." He dispelled himself. Eagle immediately got to work. He summoned some of his most trusted subordinates and informed them about the situation. A few minutes later, a couple of dozen Anbu ninjas exited the base and mixed into the common people under disguise. As Hiruzen had expected, Katsuhiro was doing the same. Right after the meeting, as Hiruzen had expected, Katsuhiro was doing the same. Right after the meeting ended, he met up with one of the civilian council members and asked him about the details of the meeting. The council member looked at him peculiarly while wondering why he was so enthusiastic about the meeting and the proposal. Even though Fujin had given him the credit for the idea, he had also said a lot of other things. Even so, he informed Katsuhiro about everything that had happened. His expression became ugly after hearing how Fujin described his proposal. He almost vomited blood when he heard that Fujin worked hard for a couple of weeks to correct his proposal. His rage increased his blood pressure once again. Even so, he was surprised when he heard about the changes Fujin had made to the proposal, especially the financial aspect. It was something he had completely overlooked. He thought, "I underestimated this boy." Even though the basic idea of guidance hall came from Danzo, the number of changes he has made almost makes this look like a new proposal. Even though he mentioned my name, he will get the main credit. How did he even do all this in just 2 days? Was he just messing with me? He shook his head and decided, "It doesn't matter. I will make him pay. Even if the council gives you credit, what matters is what the people think." Even though opening the guidance hall to the clans increased its chances of being accepted, it also gives me a weapon against you. I'll completely ruin your reputation. That would put enough pressure on the Hokage and the council to appoint me to the council. Chapter 585. The Power of Words. Katsuhiro left the council member's house and got to work. He created 8 shadow clones who used transformation jutsu and mixed with the public to improve his reputation while ruining Fujin's reputation. His clones got into action a few minutes before Eagle dispatched the Anbu ninjas. What neither Katsuhiro nor Hiruzen knew was that Fujin was the very first one to act. Not even 5 minutes had passed since the meeting ended when Fujin created and dispatched 20 shadow clones. They had begun spreading the rumors long before Hiruzen or Katsuhiro made their moves. A few Anbu entered the marketplace while disguised as old men. They began buying some groceries before a couple of them accidentally ran into each other. They enthusiastically greeted each other before one of them said, "Did you hear what happened in today's council meeting?" Though the Anbu wasn't too loud, his words were clearly heard by everyone nearby. They became curious, as the council meeting included the most influential people in the village and generally made all the big decisions. The other Anbu asked curiously, "I didn't. What happened, and why are you so happy?" The first Anbu said, "You won't believe it. Suzuki Fujin, the youngest member of our council, put forth a proposal to create a guidance hall inside the village. In the guidance hall, youngsters will be able to get guidance from experienced ninjas when they try to learn a new jutsu. It'll be a great help for the ninjas who are from a civilian background. My grandson became a ninja a few years ago. He used to complain about how kids from the clans are stronger than him as their seniors help them while he is weaker because we can't help him. Now, he will get the same help as them. You should tell it to your granddaughter as well. It'll be very helpful for her as well." The other Anbu exclaimed happily, "Wow, she'll be jumping for joy on hearing this." She was complaining about the same as well. "I had some reservations when someone so young was selected to represent the civilian ninjas, but I now see why Lord Hawkage chose him. To think that a 16-year-old youngster would come up with something like this." The people around them heard their words and were surprised. Some of them had children or relatives who were ninjas or aspired to be one. A couple of them were ninjas themselves. The first Anbu said, "Well, from what I heard, the basic idea had come from Katsuhiro. He is an elite jounin. However, his idea was very crude and unrealistic. It also excluded the clan ninjas. The council wouldn't have accepted such a proposal. Fujin worked day and night for a couple of months to make the proposal good enough. I heard that he hadn't slept for days and looked very tired with giant bags under his eyes during the council meeting. However, he improved it so much that his proposal was accepted unanimously by the council. That hasn't happened in years." The second Anbu replied, "That's even more impressive. Anyone can come up with ideas, but only a true leader can realize their potential and put them into action." The first Anbu agreed, "I know, right? I heard that he even argued against the elders and the clan leaders to get the proposal accepted immediately so that the civilian ninjas wouldn't have to wait. We are lucky that the ones selected to represent us can fight against such formidable people for us." A third old man joined the conversation and exclaimed in surprise, "He confronted the clan leaders and elders for us. Damn, I wish I could hear that conversation. We are blessed to have such a leader." Similar conversations were happening all throughout the village. All the details of the proposal were leaked to the village. They even mentioned how even the clan ninjas would benefit, causing them to feel thankful towards Fujin as well. At the same time, they minimized Katsuhiro's contribution to the proposal, almost making him look like Fujin's subordinate. Of course, Fujin's clones weren't that polite. They openly demeaned Katsuhiro and his unrealistic proposal. Hiruzen didn't do so because that would mean that others with good ideas wouldn't come forward. However, Fujin had no such qualms. Why would he increase his workload? As such, Katsuhiro's reputation took a major dive wherever his clones passed through. Katsuhiro's clones did the opposite and tried to improve his reputation while being brutal on Fujin. They used the fact that Fujin had also included clan ninjas to say that Fujin wasn't acting solely towards the benefit of the civilian ninjas and ruined Katsuhiro's original proposal. Hence, he should be removed from the seat, and his seat should be given to someone like Katsuhiro, who thought only of the civilian ninjas. Even though he managed to influence a few people, they were in the minority as there were 5 times more people campaigning against him. When the people debated among themselves in their respective circles, they were quickly explained how the proposal wouldn't have passed otherwise, as clan leaders would have opposed them. Even if it had passed, the clan ninjas wouldn't guide anyone in the guidance hall, which would be a lost opportunity. As such, even without Fujin and Hiruzen's interference, the ones who were influenced by Katsuhiro's clones changed their stance and gave credit to Fujin. When Katsuhiro heard about what the common people in Konoha were talking about, veins bulged and pulsed on his forehead, throbbing with every surge of anger. He clenched his fists so tightly that his nails dug into his palms, causing them to bleed. Hearing something like that, after spending months on the proposal, was just too torturous for him. He barely managed to control his rage and continued walking forward. He had barely taken a few steps ahead when two young ninjas passing by him talked among themselves. "Man, Fujin-san is so cool. He can even force the clan leaders and elders to support his proposal. By comparison, Katsuhiro is kind of lame. I don't know why some people think that Fujin-san should have kept the clan ninjas out of the proposal. After all, they fight with us as well. Katsuhiro was stupid to suggest that. The two of them were just normal chunins. Neither of them intended to rile up Katsuhiro. In fact, they hadn't even seen him and didn't even know what he looked like. Even so, their words caused Katsuhiro's blood pressure to rise so much that he vomited blood and fell unconscious in the middle of the road. Hearing a thud, several people looked towards him. They immediately rushed to help him out. Luckily, the crowd had a medical ninja who immediately stepped forward. She identified and inspected him. The medical ninja was first worried as an elite jounin had fallen unconscious in the middle of the road. She was afraid that a formidable enemy had infiltrated into the village once again. However, a peculiar expression appeared on her face after she inspected Katsuhiro. She thought, "This is so weird. There isn't a single wound on his body. It doesn't seem like he was poisoned either. However, his blood pressure is abnormally high. Did he fall unconscious due to high blood pressure? Can elite jounins even suffer from blood pressure?" She suppressed her curiosity and immediately took Katsuhiro to the hospital. While Katsuhiro was being treated in the hospital, Yamanaka Fu entered Danzo's office and said, "We received a scroll from Tiger." He handed Danzo the scroll. Danzo opened it and a peculiar expression appeared on his face. He thought, so they finally put forth the proposal. However, the proposal has been modified almost entirely. It won't offend the clans much, something my proposal was intended to do. Even though Fujin didn't steal the credit for the idea from Katsuhiro, he ended up stealing all the credit without putting himself at risk. Danzo analyzed for a few seconds before concluding, "This looks like Hiruzen's work. Even though the boy is smart and suspicious, he shouldn't be able to make the proposal this good. Especially the financial aspect, it was something I intended to exploit while using Katsuhiro. If he did, he wouldn't have foolishly given all the benefits to the village. That is something only Hiruzen would do. Fujin must have approached Hiruzen at some point and talked about this proposal. Hiruzen saw through my scheme as Katsuhiro kept visiting me even when Hiruzen had increased the surveillance around my labs. The modifications should be a result of that." Sigh, Katsuhiro turned out to be a complete disappointment. Danzo burned the scroll and stopped thinking about it. Without being in the council, there wasn't much he could do. Not to mention, Hiruzen had been watching him like a hawk. He was worried that Hiruzen might actually carry out his threat if he tried to interfere. More than half of his base was still missing due to the ridiculous lightning attack. He didn't want to see what was left being burned down by an unstoppable fire. With Katsuhiro hospitalized and Danzo staying out of the matter, Fujin's clones and the Anbu spread the rumors unrestricted for a couple of days until the rumors began spreading by themselves. Hiruzen allotted the budget for the guidance hall and its construction officially began. After hearing about Katsuhiro, he also made an official announcement, giving Katsuhiro some credit but giving Fujin most of the credit for the proposal. Fujin continued with his training while guiding his students. A couple more days passed. In the land of Wave, Team 7 readied themselves to face Zabuza once again. Meanwhile, Fujin had an unexpected visitor. He opened the door and said, "It's been a while, Hoka. Come in." Chapter 586, Hoka's Worry. Hoka entered Fujin's house while saying, "Yeah, it really has been a while. It's been over 6 months since our last get-together. Our get-togethers have been getting less frequent lately." Fujin nodded and said, Yeah, though it's not exactly a surprise. All of us get missions constantly from the village. Sensei was sent to the southern base on the border of the land of tea a couple of months ago. Who knows when he'll return? Hoka looked at Fujin and asked, "You didn't hear? Sensei was recalled a few days ago. He's back in the village." Fujin showed slight surprise and said, "Eh? Really?" Hoka nodded and answered, "Yes. A lot of the Jounins who were deployed along the borders were recalled. Sensei was one of them." Fujin thought for a bit before realizing, "Ah, I see. Hiruzen and Shikaku must be worried about a possible Suna surprise attack on our borders. They probably recalled the Jounins and above to ensure that higher-level combat capabilities wouldn't be impacted. It'll also allow us to mount a swifter and more powerful counterattack. In addition, they'll also be able to help out if Suna attacks during the Chunin exams. I guess Shikaku made this move." Hoka entered the circular room where they used to hang around whenever they visited Fujin's house and asked with a chuckle, "Do you still keep snacks?" Fujin asked in a deadpan tone, "You still eat snacks like a kid?" Hoka awkwardly complained, "Hey, we are still just 16, don't treat us like old men." Fujin chuckled and replied, "Well, if you behave that way it makes it hard to think of you as anything but a kid. Ha ha ha." Fujin broke into laughter. Hoka sighed and sat down on the sofa while muttering, "It looks like your sense of humor hasn't improved much." Fujin replied with a grin, "You can't improve something that is already perfect. Anyway, snacks are still in their usual place. Treat yourself." Hoka raised an eyebrow and said sarcastically, "I thought you said that only kids eat them." Fujin nodded and replied, "Yup, my students eat them. They are still kids. Didn't think you'd still be into it, but I suppose there isn't a reason for me to say no." Hoka was surprised. He grabbed a packet of chips while asking, "You have students?" Fujin nodded and grabbed a packet as well, showing that he was just messing with Hoka. He informed him about the 5 orphans he was guiding. Of course, he left out the part of them having Kekkei Genkai or them being from Kiri. He also mentioned Naruto. Hoka said, "That's interesting. I didn't think Lord Hawkage would give you so much responsibility. Still, that sounds cool. I came across a genius in my clan as well. His name is Neji." Fujin was surprised to hear Hoka mention him. He replied, "Ah, Guy's student. I have seen him a few times as well. Guy was praising his talent as well." The two chatted for a while, catching up on each other's progress. After around half an hour, both sat silently. Fujin could see that Hoka wanted to talk about something, but was hesitating for some reason. He decided to give him time to gather his thoughts. After some time of indecision, Hoka sighed and said, "Actually, I have a reason for visiting you. I need your help. However, it is a very complicated and sensitive matter. I'm not sure if I should involve you." Fujin replied, "I can see that. Anyway, what's the matter? As long as it is a secret that can't be said, there is no reason to hesitate. If the request is too much, I'll just say no." Fujin shrugged as he finished speaking. Hoka replied, "Well, it isn't exactly a secret. That said, I'll want you to keep what I say next between us two only. Even Sensei shouldn't know about it." Fujin nodded and replied, "Sure, what's the issue?" Hoka sighed and removed his Konoha headband, displaying his caged bird seal to Fujin. Fujin immediately realized, so he's come for that. "Sai, this is a troublesome matter." As Fujin expected, Hoka said, "I haven't displayed my full power for some time. If I did, I'm sure I would be considered an elite jounin for sure. Even Lord Hawkage might promote me. However, I'm worried that the main family will see a 16-year-old elite jounin as a threat. If they do, then they might kill me without even allowing me an opportunity to defend myself. This danger will amplify even more if I become a rank S ninja. I came to you since you are a grandmaster in Fuinjutsu. Can you remove this cursed seal?" Fujin went silent. His expression became very serious. He had only casually mentioned that he would say no if the request was too much. He didn't expect Hoka to put forth such a request. After analyzing for a couple of minutes, Fujin asked, "Is that really such a danger? From what I know, the Hyuga Main family has never used the caged bird seal to kill anyone ever since the Konoha ninja was established." They only used it to kill the Hyuga ninjas who were captured alive by the enemy. What Fujin said was true. Even though the caged bird seal existed and was a constant reminder to the branch family that they couldn't disobey the main family had never used to kill anyone casually. The most extreme cases would be the way Hayashi restricted Hisashi. Most Hyuga didn't actually view it as a threat as much as Neji did. Neji had seen his father getting tortured by the seal at a very young age, which had created a significant impact on his young mind. It was amplified further after his father's death. Hoka never had any such issues, which is why Fujin hadn't expected such a request. Hoka nodded and said, "That is true. However, I can't be sure if they eliminated someone in the dark. After all, many geniuses from my clan died during the previous Great Wars. Though it is possible that all were genuine casualties of the war, I just can't help but think, what if things aren't as they look on the surface? That is why I am having thoughts of removing the seal." This time, Fujin didn't try to convince Hoka against doing so. After all, Hoka's concerns were valid. Had Fujin transmigrated into a Hyuga clan member, he would have surely done everything he could to remove that seal. Even if the person who controlled the seal was kind, who would feel comfortable with someone else being able to control their life and death. At least Fujin wasn't. If he couldn't find a way to remove the seal, Fujin would have even thought of finding a way to eliminate everyone who could control the seal, making it useless. Even though Hoka had become concerned, his thoughts weren't as radical and extreme as Fujin's. Fujin replied, "I understand." He looked into Hoka's eyes and said, "That said, I hope you know that it might cause you to confront the Hyuga clan. If Hayashi tries to use that caged bird seal in the future and it doesn't work, he'll know that you have tampered with it. I'm not sure what would happen then, as there is no precedent for this, but there will be a political fallout for sure. Not to mention, he can still target your parents to keep you in check." Hoka nodded and said, "I have thought of it. It worries me as well. It will have severe political consequences. That is why I approached you. If he is going to use it at some point in the future, even if I don't give him a reason to, then that's all the more reason for me to get rid of the seal. Even if he wants to target my parents, he won't dare to do so as long as I'm alive and stronger than him." A smile appeared on Fujin's face as he realized the hidden meaning behind Hoka's words. He chuckled and said, "I see. You want me to help you handle the political fallout that will happen if he discovers it. No wonder you approached me now. Looks like I was wrong in calling you a kid. Since when did you become so good at scheming?" A smile appeared on Hoka's face as well. He said, "I didn't expect that. You'll see through it at a glance. As expected of someone who was inducted into the council by Lord Hawkage, you should leave your house sometime and go and hear what everyone is saying about you. The entire village is discussing you and the way you stood up to the elders and the clan leaders." The reason why Hoka approached Fujin now and not earlier was because of how much reputation Fujin had gained in the past few days. The stories of his bravery and the rumors of the spectral swordsman were flowing all through the village. Hence, even if Hayashi wanted to act against Hoka, he would have to consider Fujin's reaction, as the two were teammates. Hoka could use that as leverage to come to an understanding. Fujin looked at Hoka and thought, "I guess I shouldn't be surprised. As a ninja, having this level of deceit and cunning is to be expected. That said, I wonder what he would think if he knew that I was the one to spread those stories in the first place." Hoka asked again, "So, can you remove the seal?" Chapter 587, Suspicion. "So, can you remove the seal?" Hearing Hoka's question, Fujin became quiet once again. Hoka didn't disturb him, as he could see that Fujin was in deep thought. After a couple of minutes, disappointment appeared on Hoka's face as Fujin shook his head. Fujin answered, "Don't get me wrong. I'll help you, but don't get your hopes too high. Even though I'm a grandmaster in Fuinjutsu, I have become one very recently. I lack both experience and skill when compared to the older grandmasters. The Byakugan is something every village covets. There is no doubt that other villages would have done everything they could to get their hands on it. Yet, There hasn't been any instance where enemy grandmasters lifted the caged bird seal and stole the Byakugan. So, you are asking me to do something that the grandmasters in Kumo, Kiri, Suna, and Iwa haven't been able to do for decades. In addition, there isn't any record of the seal being cracked before the formation of the hidden villages either. It is a seal that hasn't been cracked for centuries. More importantly, my priority will be ensuring that I don't make a mistake that could cripple or kill you while removing the seal, as it'll be pointless if either of that happens. This makes the task even more difficult, so I can't guarantee that I'll succeed in removing the seal. Hoka sighed in relief on hearing Fujin's words. He, of course, knew of the difficulty in doing so he wasn't worried whether Fujin would succeed or not. He just hoped that Fujin would give it a try, as that was the only way he could have some hope. He had already tried learning Fuinjutsu, but had found it extremely difficult to comprehend. Considering the sensitive nature of the task, he couldn't risk approaching any other grandmaster. So Fujin was his only choice. He smiled and said, "Thank you, Fujin. I appreciate it. I know how difficult it is, and I won't pester you to keep working on it." Fujin nodded. That was what he wanted to hear. Hoka continued, "That said, I have one piece of information for you. There was someone who successfully undid the seal and stole a Byakugan. It happened in Kiri. Their elite Jounin now has one Byakugan." Fujin replied, "I know of him and even met him during a mission. However, his example isn't something I can follow for you. After all, the Hyuga from whom they extracted the Byakugan is dead, and that's not exactly an option for me, is it?" Hoka immediately had an awkward expression. He replied, "You are right." Fujin added, "Besides, there are too many things that aren't clear in Ao's case. Whatever method they used shouldn't be foolproof. For starters, why did they take only a single eye? Were they unable to save the other, or did something else happen? The anomaly that sticks out the most is why they haven't tried it again. After all, they don't care whether the Hyuga ninjas live or not. Why didn't they harvest one eye from every Hyuga they captured? They could have implanted it into other ninjas like Ao and raised a strong unit. However, there isn't a second case like Ao in Kiri. Is there an issue?" A weird expression appeared on Hoka's face as Fujin was talking. Hoka shook his head and answered, "Nothing. I just found it strange how casually you mentioned that. It's as if Byakugan was a commodity." Fujin shrugged and replied, "That's all that the other villages think of it. You might find it offensive, but unfortunately, there is nothing we can do about it. Anyway, let me observe the caged bird seal. Stay still." Hoka followed his instructions as Fujin's eyes began glowing. As Fujin continued, Hoka followed his instructions as Fujin's eyes began glowing. As Fujin continued observing the caged bird seal, a frown appeared on his face. He analyzed, "I was expecting the seal to be somewhat like Danzo's seal and my phantom. That way, no one will be able to remove the seal without having access to the right imprint. However, this is something else." Fujin raised his arm, placed his right palm on Hoka's forehead and said, "If you feel any pain at all, inform me immediately. Don't delay for even 1 second." Hoka replied, "All right." Fujin gently inserted some chakra into Hoka's head like one would while using the mystical palm. It was an application of medical ninjutsu to inspect internal injuries. As he inspected the seal, Fujin got a headache. He stopped inspecting and muttered, "This seal is crazy. I haven't seen anything like this before." Hoka asked, "What do you mean?" Fujin replied, "The seal is connected with too many nerves in your head. If anyone messes with it, it'll activate immediately, killing you and destroying your eyes in the blink of an eye. Don't allow anyone else to inspect and work on your seal. If even a slight mistake happens, it can be deadly." Sweat appeared on Hoka's face as he realized how deadly the seal was. His expression became grim. Fujin thought, "Even though my and Danzo's seals have a similar feature, our seals are connected to just a couple of important nerves, allowing us to do the job. However, the caged bird seal is at an entirely different level. Which lunatic created a seal that could connect with so many nerves? The more nerves the seal affects, the more complicated the seal is. A minute mistake could result in death. I wonder how many died while they were experimenting to create the seal. No wonder no one could remove this seal without destroying the eyes. The one who got out the Byakugan might have been extremely lucky. Still, whoever was the lunatic who created the seal, he should be a genius. This seal might be of the same level as the ones used by Jashin's. Suddenly, Fujin's eyes widened temporarily as he wondered, wait a minute. Lunatics, high level of Fuinjutsu, sacrifices. Don't tell me the Hyuga who created this seal was a follower of Jashin. With the help of a bishop, creating such a seal isn't an impossibility. After all, if Hyuga had such high expertise in Fuinjutsu, it doesn't make sense for them to not be known for Fuinjutsu like the Uzumaki clan. Why did all their advancement stop with the caged bird seal? Hoka noticed Fujin's eyes widening momentarily and his expression becoming even more serious. He nervously asked, "Did you discover a problem?" Fujin answered, "Yeah, but it isn't something that'll help you. I was just wondering how the Hyuga clan came up with such a seal. This seal is too advanced and is probably the most complicated seal in Konoha. And we are currently the most advanced village in terms of Fuinjutsu. If the Hyuga clan could create a seal like the caged bird seal centuries ago, you guys should have been well known for your Fuinjutsu prowess as well. However, I don't think I have ever heard anyone talking about Hyuga's Fuinjutsu prowess even once. Don't you find that odd?" Hoka thought for a bit and nodded. He said, "Now that I think about it, Hayashi-sama isn't a grandmaster in Fuinjutsu. We do have one grandmaster in Fuinjutsu, but he is from the branch family, and he still has the caged bird seal on him. Do you think something fishy had happened?" Fujin nodded and replied, "Yeah. Unfortunately, it happened way too far in history. Any records related to it would have long been destroyed by the main family. In fact, I doubt Hayashi even knows anything about the seal apart from how to apply it and how to trigger it. If he was creating it from scratch or could remove it, he'd be a grandmaster as well." Hoka agreed with Fujin's analysis. As much as he wanted to go back to the past and kill the one who created the seal, he knew it was impossible. Besides, the seal was very useful during the warring era. Without it, there was a chance that the Hyuga clan would have been wiped out. He asked, "So, what are the chances of removing this seal?" Chapter 588, Medical Ninjutsu. Fujin answered, "I won't lie to you, it is very difficult. Most grandmasters will be stumped on how to handle the seal, and that's just the first problem. See this?" Fujin grabbed a scroll and a pen and placed it on the table. He began drawing the caged bird seal. Hoka was surprised when Fujin began drawing how the seal connected to the nerves in his head. Fujin said, "It is just a rough drawing. I'm not that good at biology yet, but you should get the basic idea. In order to remove the seal, the person attempting it should be both a grandmaster in Fuinjutsu and a top-tier medical ninja to ensure that there isn't a single mess up. I suppose that should give you an idea." Hoka replied dejectedly, "That's almost impossible. Does that mean only someone like Lady Tsunade can have a chance?" Fujin nodded while thinking, and Orochimaru, though he isn't an option either. Hoka continued, "But she hasn't been in the village for over a decade. Not to mention, she might report me to Hayashi-sama instead of helping me. I can't risk asking her." Fujin chuckled and said, "Pretty much. Fortunately, you are in luck." Hoka asked in confusion, "What do you mean?" Fujin replied, "I was planning to pursue medical ninjutsu more seriously. If you had arrived a couple of days later, you might not have been able to find me here at this time of the day." Hoka was surprised. This time, it was a pleasant surprise. He was about to express his joy when he suddenly stopped and became serious once again. He said, "Fujin, are you telling the truth or are you planning to pursue it just to help me? If it's the latter, then you don't need to do it. You are already busy with the council duties along with missions, and your skills are already too varied with you focusing on ninjutsu, taijutsu, and fuinjutsu. Focusing on something as complicated as medical ninjutsu while trying to work on my seal will eat into too much of your time. It'll burden you too much." Fujin raised his eyebrow and asked, Since when did you become so thoughtful? That said, you don't need to worry. I won't exactly be wasting time while working on your seal. In Fuinjutsu, becoming a grandmaster is the highest you can achieve. However, no grandmaster is satisfied by it. We want to reach the level beyond irrespective of whether it exists or not. Researching that seal might help me take a few steps forward. As for medical ninjutsu, as I said, I intended to learn it either way. It is related to one of the jutsus I learnt recently. It was actually my first thought when you asked for my help. However, seeing how complex the seal is, it wouldn't work. Hoka became curious. He asked, which jutsu could have been helpful? Fujin replied, Spirit Transformation Jutsu. Unlike the Flying Thunder God, Fujin didn't intend to keep this technique a secret. In fact, he had already used it in the T&I department in front of Takeshi. So it was only a matter of time before others knew of it as well. Hoka asked, what jutsu is that? With a deadpan expression, Fujin asked, seriously, even my 9-year-old student knew about it. Hoka blushed in embarrassment and asked, well, what does it do? Fujin sighed and answered, it allows you to control your soul and fly around as a spirit. I can use it to remove your soul from your body, which would keep your soul safe even if the seal is activated. Unfortunately, the seal is very thorough. If your soul leaves your body, the seal will trigger and destroy your eyes and your brain. So even though your soul will be safe, your body will be dead. Without a body, you'll die pretty soon as well. Hoka was surprised to hear that such a magical ninjutsu existed and that Fujin knew it. However, understanding that it won't be of much use to him decreased his interest in it. He said, that sounds like a great jutsu, a shame that it won't help me. He sighed before a determined expression appeared on his face. He said, thank you, Fujin. I'm not sure what I would have done without your help. Fujin waved his hand dismissively and said, it's fine, don't worry about it. Just don't do anything stupid until I am able to remove the seal. On second thought, don't do anything stupid even if I succeed in removing the seal. A smile appeared on Hoka's face. He asked, is there anything I can do to help? Fujin shook his head and said, it'd be helpful if you were a grandmaster as well or an expert in medical ninjutsu. However, that will need years or even decades assuming you have some talent in it. Just keep doing what you are. Keep your strength hidden and become stronger without letting anyone know about it. If possible, show interest in the history of your clan but make it seem natural and don't attract any suspicion. If you can find out anything about how the seal was created, then it could be helpful for me. However, ensure that you don't fall into any trap. Take several months to establish that you have a newfound interest in it, and only then slowly approach any centuries-old records. Hoka nodded and said, don't worry, I'll be careful. The two chatted for some more time about lighter things before Hoka got up to leave. Fujin said, if you are forced to reveal your strength and notice some strangeness in Hayashi's behavior, start hanging more around me. Though my reputation is quite high, it isn't high enough to interfere in the Hyuga clan's internal matters yet. However, he'll have some reservations to act against you if he feels that I will investigate your death. Hoka nodded and said, I will. Good luck with medical ninjutsu. He left. Fujin saw him leaving and thought, well, if he does, I can dump the kid's taijutsu training on him. Though they are weak, right now, training taijutsu with a clone will become difficult as their strength increases. It'll also teach them how to fight while hiding their Kekkei Genkai. Fujin stopped thinking about it and left his house as well. He flickered a few times and reached the Konoha hospital. Aimki, who was working at the reception desk as usual, was startled as Fujin suddenly appeared in front of her and asked, is Yamanaka Yoshi or Isamu in the hospital? She immediately recognized Fujin and replied, yes, they must be in their office. They don't have any serious cases assigned. Fujin thanked her and disappeared once again. She sighed and muttered to herself, that's cool. I didn't think he'd become a council member when he came here to study mystical palm jutsu. Yoshi was enjoying his tea when he suddenly felt a presence behind him. He immediately became alert and turned around. His eyes immediately landed on Fujin. He complained, Stop startling me every time you show up." "I almost spilled my tea," Fujin asked in a deadpan tone. "I arrived as quietly as I could." "Why are you getting—" Fujin asked in a deadpan tone. "I arrived as quietly as I could." "Why are you getting startled?" Yoshi said in annoyance. "That's what startles everyone. Stop flickering in the hospital. Anyway, why are you here?" Fujin sighed and said, "I was here to accept your offer. I expected you to be a bit more excited. I guess I'll ask Lord Hawkage to arrange for someone else to guide me." Yoshi's eyes widened. He cursed, "You brat. After making me beg for years, you think I'll allow you to just run to someone else? HMPH, as if I'll let you." Fujin's left eyebrow twitched as he asked, "Are you angry or happy? Make up your mind." Even though it seemed like Yoshi was scolding Fujin, a smile could be seen on his face. He replied, "Who said humans can't feel both emotions at the same time?" Ever since he had taught mystical palm jutsu to Fujin, Yoshi had always pestered him to pursue medical ninjutsu. Even though Hiruzen had said that Fujin wasn't as talented as he thought, and explained that Fujin could master the mystical palm jutsu so quickly because he was good at yin and yang release, it didn't change Yoshi's mind, as that was equally good. However, Fujin never agreed to his pestering, as he had an extremely busy schedule and couldn't divide his time any further. As a result, all of Yoshi's attempts were futile. He had almost given up when Fujin suddenly showed up today. He couldn't help but ask, "By the way, why did you suddenly change your mind?" Fujin tilted his head and asked, "When did I change my mind? I told you that I was too busy with other stuff. My schedule opened up just a few days ago." Yoshi looked at Fujin with an unconvinced expression and wondered, was he really telling the truth? Oh well, it doesn't matter. He's still 16. That's not too old to start learning medical ninjutsu. I just hope that he doesn't get discouraged by the amount of books he'll have to memorize. Young ninjas don't like to do boring things like that. Chapter 589, Chakra Pathways. Yoshi finished his cup of tea and got up. He said, "I hope you know that you'll have to memorize a lot of books in order to learn medical ninjutsu." Fujin sighed and answered, "Yes, that was a big reason why I didn't try to do it when I was busy." Yoshi nodded and said, "All right, come with me." He led Fujin to the library inside the hospital while saying, "I'll personally guide you to ensure that you get the best guidance and become a very capable medical ninja. In addition, I'll ask Isamu and a few other experienced medical nins to guide you as well in some aspects." Fujin nodded. He had expected as much considering how much Yoshi had pestered him. They reached the library. Yoshi immediately grabbed half a dozen thick books, placed them on the table in front of Fujin and said, "These books have the basics of the human body. Even though we taught you a bit while teaching you the mystical palm jutsu, you'll be learning everything in far more depth." Fujin looked at the books and asked, "It's cool if I take them and any other books in the library with me, right?" Yoshi nodded and said, "You should. I'll discuss with Isamu to come up with a schedule for you." Fujin nodded while thinking, "Good luck trying to stick to any schedule." He said, "All right, I'll see you later then." Yoshi nodded and said, "Just come find me in my office. If I'm not here, you can visit my home as well." Fujin smiled and said, "I will." Yoshi felt that Fujin's smile was slightly strange, but he didn't think much of it. The pitiful old man was completely unaware of how crazy the next couple of months would be for him. Unfortunately, he didn't have the same experience as Hiruzen, or he would have raised his guard several times. He left the library to share the good news with Isamu. Meanwhile, Fujin stayed in the library and grabbed 6 more sets of those books and stored them in a storage scroll before returning to his home. In his basement, 72 shadow clones were working on a new seal. He immediately said, "Other than the ones who are close to a breakthrough, dispel yourselves." 70 shadow clones dispersed themselves. Fujin planned, "I can't stop working on the seal. It is far more important than medical ninjutsu. However, there is no need to have too many clones working on the seal, as that is rather redundant. I'll have 30 clones work on the seal and have 42 go through the medical books. That won't leave me with much chakra, but I guess I can still continue experimenting with fusing the fire and wind elements. If I run low on chakra, then I will focus on physical training. Having made his decision, Fujin created shadow clones and assigned them the work. The clones working on the seal continued as usual. As for the ones reading the medical books, they had additional tasks. The first was obviously to get the knowledge. The second was to recreate the books through his own understanding. Fujin planned to place the books he wrote in the library of the Phantom Haven Society. The main reason why Fujin created that organization was information. Now, his second goal was to make the organization extremely advanced in medical ninjutsu. Unlike what every member of the Phantom Haven Society thought, Fujin had no interest in their individual strengths for the time being. Of course, creating a team that was excellent at medical ninjutsu and good at research was easier said than done and would take a long time. Luckily, Fujin wasn't bothered by the time required as he knew that he had no hopes of creating a good medic unit before the Fourth Great Ninja War. Fujin got busy with his new schedule. In the Land of Wave, Team 7 faced Zabuza and Haku. Even though Naruto had learnt the great breakthrough jutsu and other wind jutsus and was quite creative with them, they weren't at a high enough level to make much of an impact against Haku's Ice Kekkei Genkai. In the end, Sasuke got heavily injured, resulting in Naruto releasing Kurama's chakra for the first time and defeating Haku. He still was unable to kill Haku, who sacrificed his life to save Zabuza and give him a chance. Unfortunately, even with that opening, Zabuza wasn't a match for Kakashi and was defeated almost immediately following Haku's death. Like in the original story, he killed Gato for disrespecting Haku's dead body before joining Haku in the afterlife. Team 7 waited for another week for the bridge to be completed before starting their return journey. During this time, Fujin's clones were done with the 6 books. Not only that, they had written 6 books of their own based on their understanding of the knowledge in the books. Fujin stored the books from the library back in the scroll while storing the books he had written in a different scroll. As he did so, he thought with a sigh, biology is as tedious to learn as I remember. This won't be fun like Fuinjutsu. That said, it isn't something I should skip. I was reluctant to study this due to how difficult it would be, but just these 6 books taught me so much about human biology. Even though the basic human body in this world is quite similar, the existence of the chakra network brings about a qualitative change. Of course, it also makes biology even more complicated. There is an entirely different branch of biology that focuses just on chakra pathways. Just like the blood vessels in our body, the chakra network is enmeshed within the body, connecting to each and every cell. Apart from the ones who have weird biologies, the chakra in every ninja's body travels through these chakra pathways. It's eerily similar to the meridians in the cultivation novels I read in my previous world. Almost makes me wonder if the chakra pathways can be strengthened or widened to increase the quantity of chakra in my body or to allow me to use it more freely. Fujin stored the scrolls while thinking. After a couple of minutes, he chuckled, I shouldn't count on something like that. There isn't any known record of someone doing something like this. Even though Tsunade could store her chakra, she did it with the help of Fuinjutsu and not with just her medical knowledge. So, I'll be starting entirely new research. Who knows how many decades of work will be needed to complete it. Besides, even though there are similarities, they end with the chakra pathways. Unlike the power system in cultivation novels, there is no such thing as a danshin in this world. And even though everyone speaks about chakra reserves, there aren't any chakra storage tanks or reservoirs in our body, as chakra isn't exactly stored in the body in the form of chakra. Instead, it is continuously produced by the body depending on the person's needs, and this is done with the help of the chakra network as well. Since the chakra network is connected with each and every cell in the body, it is able to draw out the physical energy in each cell. It transfers this physical energy and spiritual energy to the organs inside our body. These organs, along with doing their normal functions, are also responsible for combining physical and spiritual energy into chakra. Under normal circumstances, the amount of physical energy that gets drawn out is very negligible. When a ninja tries to use chakra for something, only then does it extract more physical and spiritual energy. This is also the reason why exhausting all chakra results in coma or death. It is because all the physical energy in the ninja's body is consumed. In addition, if the chakra is created but the ninja decides against using it, which happens quite frequently with the shadow clones, the chakra just gets converted back into physical and spiritual energy with negligible losses for creating and deconstructing the chakra. This nature of chakra is also why the amount of chakra in a ninja's body is directly related to his physical energy and spiritual energy. Even if one is lacking, then the amount of chakra they can create will be severely restricted. Of course, that is unless one is born with a special physique, like the Uzumakis, or have their physiques tempered by the tailed beasts sealed inside them or other methods. In those cases, the physical and spiritual energy of the ninjas improves at a rapid rate. So, even if I manage to widen or strengthen my chakra pathways, it won't help me to increase my chakra reserves. Instead, the only advantage might be that they will be able to extract physical energy fractions of seconds quicker and supercharge my jutsus more quickly. On second thought, that's not a bad buff at all, especially while dealing with ninjas who move too quickly. Perhaps I'll ask Phantom Haven's future research team to work on this after all. Fujin stretched his body and muttered to himself, regardless, learning medical ninjutsu will likely bring me some surprises. Though it might not be very useful before the Fourth Great Ninja War, it might be the most important thing for me once I become old. There is no harm in working on it for a few months and building a good base right now. It'll also help me create a bond with Tsunade rather easily. Even if that doesn't happen, I can just bribe her to teach me the stuff that is beyond Yoshi. Now then, I hope Yoshi has created a good training plan for me and got a lot of good help. With a smirk on his face, Fujin disappeared from his house. Chapter 590, Headaches. Sitting in his office inside Konoha's hospital, Yoshi grumbled, "Where is that insensitive kid? He came to me to ask for guidance but hasn't shown up for a week." Isamu sighed and said, "I told you that you shouldn't have started by giving the books. That bores anyone who wants to learn medical ninjutsu and they become reluctant to continue learning." However, Yoshi argued back, "And I already said that if someone can't read 6 books, then they have no business in being a medical ninja. They'll need to read dozens of books and thousands of papers to be an acceptable medical ninja." Isamu sighed again and said, "It's about generating interest, Yoshi-sensei. Once we generate enough interest, they can read even 100 books to satisfy their curiosity. If not—" "What curiosity?" Isamu was stunned and immediately turned around. He hadn't sensed anyone approaching him from the back. Fortunately for Yoshi, he was looking at Isamu and hence noticed Fujin suddenly appearing behind Isamu. Isamu relaxed slightly seeing that Fujin was the one behind him. Yet he couldn't help but curse, "This brat. How the hell does he keep sneaking on me?" It was important to remember that even though they were medical ninjas, both Yoshi and Isamu were jounins. They weren't special jounins like many other medical ninjas who could get that rank due to their expertise in medical ninjutsu, but proper jounins who could compete equally against jounins who fight on the front lines. In addition, both had lived through 2 wars, so they weren't lacking in experience or survival instincts. Yet, Fujin kept sneaking behind them successfully. Fujin smiled and said, "It's good to see you here, Isamu-sensei. Yoshi-sensei, shall we move to the next step?" Isamu grumbled, "Fujin, one of these days you are going to give me a heart attack." Fujin chuckled and replied, "Don't worry, you're still very young and healthy. If something does happen, I'll quickly bring you to Yoshi-sensei." Isamu was left speechless. Yoshi ignored their interaction and asked in annoyance, "What next step? You didn't show up for over a week after I gave you the books." Fujin tilted his head and asked, "Didn't you ask me to read and understand those books? It took me some time. Is a week too slow to understand them?" Yoshi and Isamu's eyes widened. Yoshi said, "You were just supposed to read them. I would have taught the contents inside it to you. Also, did you go through the 6 books and understand them in a week?" Neither Isamu nor Yoshi believed Fujin's words. Each of the 6 books he was given had over 2,000 pages. It wasn't something that could be read in a week, let alone understood. Yoshi had planned to teach everything inside those books to Fujin in 4 to 5 months. To their shock, Fujin nodded and said, "Yup, I just kept the books back in the library. What's next?" Yoshi and Isamu were left speechless by his reply. Needless to say, they still didn't believe it. Yoshi quickly asked Fujin a few questions, which Fujin answered promptly. The more he asked, the more he was stunned. Isamu joined in and asked a couple of questions as well, but Fujin answered those as well. Yoshi and Isamu glanced at each other, shock visible in their eyes. Fujin chuckled internally at their expressions while thinking, "Shadow clone rocks as usual. With 42 shadow clones, I have effectively spent 42 weeks reading those books." Of course, it won't be as effective as one person spending 42 weeks reading the books as 7 clones had to read the same books, causing an overlap. However, it is still probably equivalent to one person studying the books for around 15 to 20 weeks. No wonder they are so shocked. Oh well, they will learn about it very soon. Luckily for me, both are jounins with a decent amount of chakra. With no option but to believe Fujin, Yoshi said, "All right, let's move to the next step. The 6 books you have gone through have given you a basic understanding of human physiology. Your next topic will be learning human anatomy. We will dissect a dead body and study what you have read practically." Fujin nodded. In his previous life, he would have been extremely reluctant and nauseated to try something like this. However, in this life, Fujin had already done a few experiments on dead bodies. He had even studied the heads of root ninjas to learn Danzo's seals. Not to mention, the number of bodies he cut open during his missions had long exceeded 1,000. The two of them led Fujin to the anatomy lab, where they generally taught other trainees. However, since it was an odd hour, there weren't any trainees in the lab. The trio entered the room and just saw a middle-aged medical ninja who was responsible for supervising the lab. Yoshi looked at him and said, "Hidaki, meet Fujin. He is the one I was talking about." Hidaki looked at Fujin and thought, so he is the genius Yoshi-sensei kept bragging about. Sigh, I thought he was kidding when he said that he was bringing a council member to teach. Then again, he did pass a brilliant proposal. "I'm looking forward to the guidance hall's construction." Hidaki approached them and chuckled. "I was sure you were joking." "Good to meet you, council member Fujin." Fujin smiled and said, "I'm just a student here. No need for any formalities." Hidaki nodded and thought, "Not bad. I always thought that he'd be far more arrogant." He looked at Yoshi and asked, "Are you planning to give him an introduction to human anatomy?" Yoshi shook his head and answered, "No, we are beginning anatomy studies." A weird expression appeared on Hidaki's face as he wondered, didn't he start teaching him just a week ago? It's too early to start with anatomy. Despite his reservations, he didn't say anything as Yoshi was far more experienced than him. He thought that Yoshi would have his reasons for doing so. The anatomy lab had 30 tables. Each table had a dead body on it along with a few tools to study the body. Yoshi led Fujin towards one and began explaining. After an hour-long explanation, he displayed how to dissect the body and said, "Now you try." Suddenly, Fujin asked, "You can use the multi-shadow clone jutsu, right?" Yoshi and the other two were confused. Yoshi nodded and said, "Yes, why are you asking?" Fujin smiled and said, "Learning just by myself will take a lot of time." He looked at Hidaki and asked, "The lab doesn't lack dead bodies, right?" Hidaki nodded, still confused about Fujin's intentions. Regardless, they didn't lack any dead bodies. After all, too many missions involved killing. Several missions involved bringing back the dead bodies, which would be donated to the hospital. In addition, storing dead bodies was extremely easy in this world. As a result, The hospital had several hundred dead bodies stored in scrolls. Fujin continued, "That's great. In that case, let's work on all 30 bodies at the same time. It'll help speed up the learning process considerably." In the blink of an eye, smoke covered the entire room. As it faded away, 30 Fujins could be seen in the lab, one standing at each desk. In an instant, Yoshi and Isamu understood how Fujin managed to go through the books within 7 days. Isamu muttered in disbelief, "Did you use shadow clones to study the physiology books within 7 days?" Hideki, who was hearing it for the first time, looked at Fujin with a shocked expression and thought, "What the hell?" He completed the introductory books in a week. Even with shadow clones, that should be extremely difficult. Not to mention, Fujin nonchalantly replied, "More or less. Anyway, let's continue." Yoshi ignored his words and said with a solemn expression, "Fujin, using shadow clones for training is a bad idea. The memories that are transferred back to you create a strain on your brain. You must have felt the headaches. Even if you want to use shadow clones to help you, you should have all clones work on the same thing. Otherwise, it can cause trauma." Fujin nodded. Having been using the shadow clone technique since the academy, he had long gotten used to the headaches. Even though he was worried about any side effects it might cause initially, the worries disappeared when no medical ninja said that there was anything wrong with him. He just needed to have adequate rest and sleep for the headaches to go away. With time, Fujin stopped making his clones work on just one thing and allowed different clones to work on different tasks. While getting several kinds of memories would cause even more headaches, Fujin's brain had become used to handling such chaotic memories as well. That said, he still dispelled the clones working on the same tasks at a time to reduce the headaches. So Fujin wasn't as concerned as Yoshi regarding this drawback of multi-shadow clone jutsu. Chapter 591, What the Hell Happened? To the surprise of the experienced medical ninjas, Fujin said, "I'm aware of the drawbacks. Don't worry, I do take proper precautions." For some reason, all 3 medical ninjas doubted Fujin's words. However, they understood that it wasn't their role to instruct Fujin. After all, even though he was a junior, he was ranked higher than them as an elite jounin. Not to mention, he was a council member as well. Yoshi said, "As long as you are aware, it's fine. However, do take care of yourself. This jutsu is forbidden for a reason. If you take it lightly, the jutsu will burn you in more than one way." Fujin nodded and replied, "I will." Yoshi said, "Good, you can dispel 2/3 of your clones. Unlike you, I'm not young enough to maintain 30 shadow clones for a long time." Fujin immediately looked at Isamu and Hideki and asked, "You two can maintain 9 clones each, right?" The 3 of them were left speechless once again. There was no hesitation or doubt in Fujin's voice. He didn't even take a second to think after Yoshi asked him to dispel 20 shadow clones. Instead, he acted as if it was the most natural thing. Both Isamu and Hideki nodded involuntarily. Fujin smiled and said, "That's great, let's start." Lost for words, the 3 of them created shadow clones and began guiding Fujin and his clones after discussing among themselves what each one of them would teach Fujin. Despite having been teaching medical ninjutsu to young trainees for decades, it was their first time doing something like this. For the next 8 hours, they continued teaching Fujin without a break, before finally calling it a day. Fujin thanked the 3 of them and left the lab after confirming that they would meet again the next morning. As soon as Fujin left, the 3 of them collapsed into chairs, and their breathing became rough. Hideki asked, "What the hell happened today?" Isamu echoed his question and asked, "Why exactly did we create shadow clones to teach Fujin?" "I don't think I have ever created 9 shadow clones at the same time, let alone maintain them for 8 hours. Yoshi scoffed. "You two are still a decade younger than me. What would you know about how many headaches I'm getting?" He paused for a minute, thinking about what exactly happened in the last 8 hours. Finally, he grumbled, "I was too enthusiastic to teach him. We got sucked into that kid's pace. We didn't even realize what he was asking from us. Not to mention, we already promised to keep teaching him in this manner." The three senior medical ninjas looked at each other helplessly. While they had been hot-blooded and enthusiastic during their younger years, they had long passed that phase. In the peaceful time, they had gotten used to playing with the trainees to have fun. Hideaki, in particular, enjoyed seeing the reactions of the young trainees when they had to dissect dead bodies. He would actively try to put the trainees out of their comfort zone. Meanwhile, Yoshi and Isamu partook in pranks like making young trainees think of happy thoughts while learning mystical palm jutsu along with other things. However, there was never an instance where the trainees turned the tables around and made them feel helpless apart from Fujin reverse pranking Yoshi. Isamu sighed and said, "We underestimated him." Hideaki sighed as well and said, "I'll have to keep this lab off limits for the trainees for the next few days as we'll be guiding Fujin all the time. Still, he is quite ridiculous. Didn't you two notice something strange?" Yoshi and Isamu were too tired to think of anything. Yoshi asked, "What are you talking about? We taught everything as we had planned." "In fact, we taught more than we had initially discussed." "What was strange?" Hideaki answered with a serious expression. "The fact that we could teach everything as planned and more is extremely strange. When did we ever manage to teach everything we wanted to with the trainees learning everything properly?" Yoshi and Isamu's eyes widened. Everything else that had happened made them overlook that aspect. Hideaki continued, "Not to mention, Fujin and his 29 shadow clones all never lost their focus. Even when he dispelled them, he didn't seem to be under any strain despite having more than thrice the number of shadow clones as us. It means," Yoshi completed his sentence, "it means that he has used this tactic so many times that he has long gotten used to its side effects." Shock and disbelief appeared on their faces. Isamu muttered, "No wonder he has achieved so much at such a young age. No wonder Lord Hawkage looks at him so favorably and gave him a seat on the council. With such a hard-working nature and ability to stay focused for hours, there is no telling how much stronger he'll become." The three of them exchanged eye glances. This time, along with shock, there was some excitement in their eyes. Yoshi said with excitement in his voice, "Lord Third Hawkage, he is still as excellent as always. He has kept such a talent hidden from everyone. With the two Sanins refusing to take center stage, everyone believes that Hatake Kakashi will be the one to lead Konoha in the future. As the son of White Fang, the student of the fourth Hokage, and with excellent strength and leadership qualities, he ticks all the boxes. However, no one knows that Suzuki Fujin might be his equal in strength. Even if he isn't yet, it is only a matter of time with such dedication. After all, he is 10 years younger than Kakashi. With 2 rank S ninjas from this generation, Konoha will continue being strong." Having realized it, the three of them forgot their tiredness and headaches and became very excited. It was thrilling news. Isamu said, "It looks like the rumors about the spectral swordsman are true. His combat strength must be phenomenal, not to mention his clones could inspect the entire village, so his chakra reserves must be very high as well. In addition, he is also a Fuinjutsu Grandmaster. Even though I knew his talent, I was a bit suspicious and thought that Lord Hawkage wanted to increase his reputation. It looks like we were wrong." Hideaki nodded. Seeing their expressions, Yoshi immediately said, "While this is great news, don't tell it to anyone. Lord Third must have his reasons for not making this information public. We shouldn't spoil his plans." Isamu and Hideaki nodded in agreement. What the three of them didn't know was that Hiruzen had long wanted to increase Fujin's reputation and had taken every opportunity he could to increase Fujin's reputation. Unfortunately for him, most of Fujin's achievements couldn't be made public. As a result, he was far more famous in the enemy villages and organizations than in Konoha. If not for the fact that Anoki placed a bounty on him, Hiruzen put him on the council and tasked him to inspect the entire village. The majority of the Konoha would probably not even know that someone called Fujin existed. If Hiruzen knew that the three of them had realized Fujin's potential, He would have encouraged them to spread the information instead of keeping it a secret among them. Yoshi smiled, seeing that the two of them agreed. He thought, even though we shouldn't spread the information, I need to inform Inoichi. The Yamanaka clan should have good relations with him. At the very least, we shouldn't be at odds with him. Suddenly, a few knocks were heard on the door of the lab. Yoshi looked at it and said, "Come in." Two girls entered the room. They were his assistants, Hyuga Emi and Kurama Asuka. They approached Yoshi and said, "You are finally free, sensei." Yoshi asked, "Did something happen?" Emi nodded and said, "Yes, you are supposed to teach the next batch the mystical palm jutsu tomorrow. They want to confirm your availability." Yoshi replied, "I'll be busy tomorrow. Ask the management to arrange someone else tomorrow." Having realized Fujin's potential, he didn't want to focus on anything else for the time being. Asuka showed a difficult expression and explained, "Sensei, all the senior medical ninjas are busy. They can't arrange anyone else so quickly." Yoshi waved his hand dismissively and said, "It doesn't matter, I'll be busy for a few days or weeks. So will be Isamu, Hidaki, and the anatomy lab. Ask the management to handle things accordingly. They can arrange another teacher temporarily or push back the training session." The two girls were helpless against Yoshi's stubbornness. Having worked under him for years, the two understood that they wouldn't be able to change his mind and took their leave. Even though the management of Konoha Hospital wouldn't be pleased, they knew that there wasn't anything they could do against someone like Yoshi. If anything, they were afraid that he might retire due to his old age. The management decided to ignore their antics and delayed the new batch by a few days. However, when the situation didn't change for over a couple of weeks, they had to inform Hiruzen about their behavior. Hiruzen was about to leave when he got their report. He read it with a confused expression while thinking, "That's weird. Since when did Yoshi start saying no to teaching youngsters? Isn't he usually very enthusiastic about teaching them? I can't have someone as dedicated as him slack off or retire." From the report, Hiruzen understood that the three of them had been occupying the anatomy lab, denying others access to it. He activated his chakra field to sense whether the three of them were still there. On sensing them, Hiruzen disappeared from his office. In a couple of seconds, he appeared outside the anatomy lab. Without knocking, he opened the door and entered. The sudden intrusion attracted the attention of the three senior medical ninjas. They were surprised to see Hiruzen. However, Hiruzen was even more surprised at seeing their appearances. He couldn't help but wonder, what the hell happened? Chapter 592, Avoiding the Plague. The three senior medical ninjas looked in terrible shape. Large bags could be seen under their eyes. It looked like they hadn't slept for years. Tiredness could be seen all over their body. It was as if they had just been to war and healed 1,000 ninjas. Hiruzen couldn't help but be stunned by their state. Before he could ask anything, the three of them stood up through a lot of effort and respectfully asked, "Lord Hawkage, why are you here?" Hiruzen replied, "Forget about me, what happened to you guys? Why do you look so tired?" Hearing his questions, the three of them sighed. After realizing Fujin's potential, the three ignored their tiredness and began teaching him wholeheartedly. Their enthusiasm lasted exactly 2 days before they realized that they couldn't keep up with Fujin. Unfortunately, it was too late to back away by then. They were ashamed to tell Fujin to slow down and take it easy. Hence, they resorted to dropping subtle hints about the same. Unfortunately for them, Fujin seemed to be completely oblivious to any hints they dropped. Instead, he pushed them even more. Yoshi grumbled, "Kids these days, they have no respect for the elders." Hiruzen raised an eyebrow in confusion. Isamu added, "I feel like he is doing this intentionally as revenge for all the time we pestered him to become a medical ninja." Hidaki looked at him and asked, "I didn't do that, so why is he making me suffer? Besides, no one can be so oblivious. He is definitely doing it intentionally." A few question marks in Hiruzen's head. He didn't understand what they were talking about. However, he felt something very familiar with the situation. He asked, "Could you stop beating around the bush and explain why you three are so tired?" Yoshi sighed again and explained, "We had been pestering Fujin to take medical ninjutsu seriously since the day we approached you. He finally accepted our offer 3 weeks ago. We began teaching him about human anatomy a couple of weeks ago. He requested us to use shadow clones to teach him so that he can learn it more quickly. Since then, we have been teaching him for more than 12 hours daily, with each of us creating 9 shadow clones. We thought that he'd slow down eventually. However, he has been pushing us to teach him even faster, and we have been unable to convince him to take it slow." A shiver passed through Hiruzen's spine as he realized, no wonder I was getting a familiar sensation. The 3 senior medical ninjas looked at Hiruzen with hope in their eyes. They hoped that their mighty and wise Hokage would be able to provide them with a method to get off the back of the tiger they had unknowingly climbed. Unfortunately for them, all they got was a look full of pity as Hiruzen turned around and said, "I see. It's good to see you make such efforts to train our next generation and pass the will of fire to them. Good luck. I'll ensure that the hospital management won't bother you." The 3 of them watched Hiruzen's back with wide eyes. Isamu tried calling out, "Lord Hokage." However, even before a word exited his mouth, Hiruzen had disappeared from the room. He had no interest in poking his nose in Fujin's business. If anything, Hiruzen was glad and thanked the gods that Fujin wasn't present in the lab when he visited. Otherwise, Fujin might have asked him to send a few clones too. He returned to the office and thought, even with shadow clones, learning medical ninjutsu will take several months. Fujin shouldn't have the energy to do anything else during this time. Besides, that boy becomes incredibly focused when he is learning new skills. A smile appeared on Hiruzen's face as he realized, it looks like I'll be safe from any ludicrous requests for a few months. If Yoshi, Isamu, and Hidaki were to hear Hiruzen's thoughts, his godlike image in their hearts would crumble. In fact, it was already very shaky after he escaped instead of helping them. Isamu exclaimed, "How could Lord Hokage abandon us in this difficult situation? And how could he not understand our real thoughts? Has everyone become oblivious all of a sudden?" Hidaki replied, "Oblivious. I swear I could see a hint of pity in his eyes. He didn't leave because he was oblivious. He left because he is aware of that troublesome kid." Yoshi agreed. Yeah, though it was momentarily, his expression showed that he probably guided Fujin the same way and regretted it. Isamu looked at the 2 of them and asked helplessly, "What do we do then?" Hidaki wasn't sure what to say. Yoshi helplessly answered, "What can we do? If even Lord Hokage couldn't stop him, how can we make him take it easy? Not to mention, Lord Hokage asked us to keep teaching him. We just need to be careful next time." The 3 looked at each other before letting out another long sigh in unison. The number of times they sighed in the last 2 weeks exceeded the times they sighed in a year before Fujin visited them. During these 2 weeks, another interesting development which involved Fujin had happened in Konoha. Uzumaki Naruto, the sole Jinchuriki in Konoha, had moved into Fujin's compounds. Even though the elders and clan leaders had agreed earlier, they paid close attention to this development, as Fujin's reputation had increased a lot since the time they had given their agreement due to the proposal of the Guidance Hall. They took note of Fujin's increasing political influence, but didn't do anything else. However, there was one person who was fuming at this development. It was Danzo, who wanted to get his hands on Naruto for a long time. Hiruzen and the other clan leaders always opposed it, and yet they hadn't objected to Fujin taking Naruto under his wings. Unfortunately, there wasn't anyone he could complain to, as Hiruzen refused to entertain him on this topic. As a matter of fact, Hiruzen hadn't even asked for his opinion since he was no longer a part of the council. Danzo could only ignore this matter and build his strength for the time silently while waiting for the time when he could make a move again. Yoshi, Isamu, and Hidaki continued teaching Fujin the human anatomy for another week until he had grasped all the basics. All 3 breathed a sigh of relief when they were finally done. Isamu thought, finally, the torture is over. The next step is pathology and toxicology. He'll need to go through the books first. We will finally have a couple of weeks of rest. I'm going to go home and sleep for an entire week. I don't care what my wife and children think. At the same time, Hidaki was crying rivers of joy mentally while thinking, it's finally over. I only teach anatomy. I don't care what else Isamu and Yoshi-sensei promised to teach him. It has nothing to do with me. Fujin raised an eyebrow and asked, why are you all sighing? Let's move on to the next topic. The three looked begrudgingly at Fujin, who continued maintaining an innocent smile. The smile had become a nightmare for the three of them. They dreamt about it every night for the past few nights. Yoshi said, Fujin, you are done with basic human physiology and human anatomy. The next part is pathology and toxicology. For these topics, you need to know the theory first. I will give you the books. You can come back and visit me once you are done reading and understanding them. Once Fujin became busy reading the books, the three of them could rest. It was the reason why they were relieved. However, a frown appeared on Fujin's face. He said, Sensei, I could learn physiology books by myself as they were only the basics, and you two had already taught me a lot of that stuff while teaching me the mystical palm jutsu. I won't be able to learn pathology and toxicology so easily, and I'll have several doubts as well. The trio were stunned by Fujin's reply. They couldn't help but think, will you only be happy when we die due to overworking? However, after thinking for a bit longer, they understood that Fujin was right. Those topics were far more complicated. Needing help was natural. Yoshi's mind quickly thought of a plan and said, you are right, Fujin. I was planning to conduct daily classes for you. We'll clear all your doubts and guide you with the difficult topics. However, I overlooked an important point. You have just learnt anatomy and physiology. Not to mention, you used shadow clones to learn them very quickly. If you start learning something else so quickly, you'll jumble everything and become confused. Hence, you shouldn't study anything new for at least a week. Revise what you have learnt so far for a week. Come visit me when you think you have revised enough anytime after a week has passed. I'll hand you the books then. Chapter 593, Guidance Hall. Fujin looked at Yoshi suspiciously. The three senior medical ninjas immediately became tense. They quickly began thinking of all possible reasons they could give to convince Fujin to take the break in case he insisted on continuing the training. Unlike his expression, Fujin was laughing in his mind. He thought, it looks like not everyone is as shameless as Hiruzen. He would have long escaped after telling me not to approach him for a week. Then again, these guys aren't as fast as him. So who can say for sure? To the relief of the three senior medical ninjas, Fujin replied, all right, I'll revise what I have learnt so far for a week. I'll see you later. Thank you for teaching me about human anatomy. Fujin disappeared from the room. The three of them let out a long sigh of relief and collapsed on the floor. Isamu said, finally, I can take a break. I haven't even been able to sleep for 3 weeks. Every time I close my eyes, I see his smile and hear his voice pushing me to teach him more. Yoshi and Hidaki agreed. They went through the same. Hidaki caught his breath and stood up. He looked at Yoshi and said respectfully, I only promised you that I'd guide Fujin in anatomy. I have completed my promise. Please don't find me again in the future and ask other experienced ninjas to teach that demon. I won't be telling them anything related to him. As soon as he was done speaking, he turned around and ran out of the room. Yoshi cursed under his breath, this brat. Despite having guided Hidaki when he was young, Yoshi knew he couldn't share his misery with him anymore. Instead, he said, he is right. I'll ask other experienced medical ninjas to help us. That way our workload will be reduced. Isamu replied, yeah, you should. Why should others be spared from this hell? However, I'm not sure if it'll reduce our workload. Yoshi immediately turned his head towards Isamu and asked, what do you mean? Isamu answered, I'm afraid that he'll just create more shadow clones. Pain could be heard in Isamu's pitiful voice. It could also be seen on Yoshi's face, who was lost for words. Time continued flowing. As he had said, Fujin gave Yoshi a week's break. Unfortunately, The three of them still experienced nightmares every night and woke up with sweat flowing down their foreheads. During this time, Takeshi managed to master the jutsus Fujin had taught him. He decided to take the next step and create a new scorch-release jutsu. Fujin used the opportunity to enter his body again with the spirit transformation jutsu and performed scorch jutsus, which Takeshi already knew. It allowed him to become much more familiar with scorch release and understand better how wind and fire chakra fused inside the body. He took a step closer to learning scorch release, but still couldn't do it. However, he wasn't very worried as he could feel that it was only a matter of time before he took the last step. Fujin also used the break to take a mission and make a quick visit to the Phantom Haven Society to ensure that everything was moving smoothly. The Phantom Haven Society had recruited 2 more batches of young children, but were only able to recruit 3 experienced ninjas. None of them caught Fujin's eye. He applied the Phantom Seal on them and gave a speech about the Phantom Will before focusing on the information network. Thanks to the funds he had provided, the Phantom Haven Society had built a preliminary information network. It was only active in the land of rivers, but they were in the process of expanding it further. Fujin instructed them to not expand into the land of rain and instead provided them intel on how they should expand into the land of fire and the land of winds. Fujin had been very active in those areas, so his information would result in them making quick progress. After returning from the mission, Fujin continued studying medical ninjutsu. Yoshi had dragged in another 5 senior medical ninjas whom he had taught in the past. Unaware of the situation, they happily agreed to help Fujin as they wanted to take the opportunity to build a connection with a council member and a promising ninja. Needless to say, each one of them regretted and cursed Yoshi, Isamu, and Hidaki in their minds. However, they didn't slack off, and Fujin progressed at a fast speed. As Isamu speculated, Fujin used more clones. So, no one was spared, but Fujin quickly learned about pathology and toxicology. He particularly paid a lot of attention to toxicology as he was quite interested in poisons. After spending a few weeks exploiting the senior medical ninjas, Fujin had gathered enough knowledge for them to allow him to diagnose the patients who visited the hospital. On that day, every medical ninja who taught Fujin had a long party and drank all night. Around the same time, the guidance hall was finally constructed. Every civilian ninja was excited to hear that news. Understanding its significance in terms of both strengthening the ninjas and the economic benefits it'll bring, Hiruzen decided to make it a big event and decided to inaugurate the guidance hall personally. As the one who had made the proposal, Fujin was invited as well. Early in the morning, Fujin flickered and reached the location. He noticed Hiruzen observing the hall and flickered next to him. Without looking at him, Hiruzen said, "You are finally here, Fujin." Fujin nodded while looking at the guidance hall and said, "Not bad at all. I didn't think you'd get something so grand constructed so quickly. Did you call me here just to see the hall?" Hiruzen chuckled and said, "It was your proposal after all. Come, let's check it out, see if everything is to your liking." He began walking. Fujin chuckled as well and followed him. Stepping through the towering gates of the guidance hall, Hiruzen and Fujin were greeted by a sprawling courtyard paved with polished stone. Lush greenery lined the pathways, punctuated by carefully tended gardens bursting with vibrant blooms. Away from the hustle and bustle of the village, it resembled a serene oasis, not unlike the vast forests that surrounded Konoha. As they walked, both Fujin and Hiruzen felt a sense of calmness and peace. It was a state of mind that was perfect for training. It was so perfect that Hiruzen momentarily became worried that Fujin might kickstart the guidance hall by asking for his guidance right then and there. To his relief, Fujin didn't ask for anything. At the heart of the courtyard stood the main building of the guidance hall, a majestic structure crafted from the finest timber and stone. Its sweeping rooflines soared skyward, adorned with ornate eaves and intricate wooden carvings that spoke of craftsmanship generations in the making. Fujin sighed at the sight and muttered, You should have informed me about such fine craftsmen back when I was building my house. Hiruzen smiled on hearing Fujin's words, thinking that Fujin was praising the art. However, on hearing what he said next, Hiruzen almost tripped. Fujin continued, "The way they have constructed the hall maximizes the space where we can inscribe seals. If my house was constructed in this manner, I could easily place twice the number of seals on it." Hiruzen looked at Fujin with disbelief and wondered, how many seals does he want to inscribe on that damned house? I don't think there is anyone in this world who can count the seals on his house, and that probably includes this boy as well. Fujin ignored his reaction, and they entered the guidance hall. The design on the inside was just as captivating as the designs on the outside. Fujin and Hiruzen inspected the arrangements made inside the hall for doing its main job. The main hall was extremely spacious and could easily accommodate a few hundred ninjas. At the end of the hall was a wide office with windows. Employees would sit there and accept requests from the youngsters who wanted someone to guide them for any jutsus. The office behind the windows would have people who would assign the youngsters to appropriate guides. There were several spacious rooms on the two sides of the hall as well. One of them was to keep a record of the veteran ninjas who were willing to guide youngsters and the jutsus they were willing to teach. The remaining rooms served other purposes. One of those rooms was for the Anbu that Hiruzen was planning to station there. He had planned to station 2 Anbu squads permanently at the guidance hall. In addition, several more Anbu squads were arranged to inspect the ninjas who wanted to guide the youngsters. Fujin and Hiruzen inspected everything and didn't have any complaints. Hiruzen teasingly asked, "Do you want to register as a guide? I'm sure everyone would want to learn wind release jutsus from you." Fujin imitated Hiruzen's sigh of exhaustion and said, "I have my hands full guiding nearly 150 kids. Besides, I'm only 16 years old. People are doubtful of my capabilities. However, if you register, I'm sure everyone will come to learn from the professor." With a smirk on his face, Fujin added, "I'll be sure to be the first one to ask for your guidance, Grandpa." This time, Hiruzen sighed and said, "As a Hokage, I'm very busy to sign up as a guide here. The guidance hall needed a lot of my attention. It has just finished and now I'll be busy with the Chunin exams." Hiruzen became serious and looked at Fujin. He said, "Actually, I wanted to talk to you about the Chunin exams." Chapter 594, The Greatest Idiot. "Actually, I wanted to talk to you about the Chunin exams." Fujin was surprised to hear Hiruzen talk about it. After the previous council meeting, they hadn't discussed Sunagakure's again. He wondered, did he get more information on Sunagakure's movements to be so alert all of a sudden? Or did Jiraiya notice Orochimaru's movements? Fujin paid close attention as Hiruzen continued, "You know the 3 stages of the Chunin exams, right?" Fujin nodded. It wasn't something he would forget easily. Hiruzen continued, "I want you to be the proctor for the 2nd phase. Fujin was surprised. He never expected Hiruzen to put forth such a request. Hiruzen could see the surprise on Fujin's face as well. What he didn't know was that it was a happy surprise for Fujin. Of course, Fujin had no intention of showing his real emotions and asked in a confused tone, "Why? Didn't Anko take over clan leader Tsum's job? Did something happen?" Hiruzen replied, "Nothing has happened yet. It's just that I have a feeling that something strange will happen during the Chunin exams. As for what that is, I have no idea. My Anbu couldn't find any clues that could answer my unease. Nothing should happen during the 1st phase as all the sensei will be close by. Similarly, I'll be looking over the 3rd phase personally. Only the 2nd phase is where we won't be able to keep an eye on everything properly. If anyone has ill intentions, they will make a move during that phase. Considering that the children of most clan leaders might take part in the upcoming Chunin exams, I don't want to leave it to chance. With you overlooking the 2nd phase, it'll deter anyone who has any nefarious plans, especially if it is Suna." Hiruzen knew that Suna would have connected the dots by now. Even though Rasa was a bit slow, Fujin's reputation outside Konoha was too high for anyone to overlook him. If Fujin was the proctor, then Hiruzen believed that Suna wouldn't try anything unless someone like Rasa or Chiyo could somehow sneak into the Forest of Death without being detected. Fujin was surprised by Hiruzen's reason and thought to feel unease about a future calamity. That's very impressive. I wonder if that is something that develops with experience. That said, he couldn't guess that his source of unease was his former student and not Suna. Regardless, this is very good for me. I'll be able to recruit Karin with ease. I'll also be able to monitor if there are any changes to the original story due to my involvement. At least, Team 7 fight against Orochimaru should be different, though I don't think it'll affect the end result. I might also get a hint about what plans Orochimaru has made for me. Well, Hiruzen broke Fujin's chain of thoughts. Fujin nodded and answered, "All right, I'll be the proctor. It shouldn't be an issue." Hiruzen said, "Good, I'll have Anko help you out. You can make some changes to the exam format if you want, but don't make it very complicated. Alternatively, you can just let Anko run the show in the background while you show your face and appear to be in charge." Fujin replied, "Sure." Why would Fujin complain when Hiruzen did everything he could to lessen his workload? He just nodded happily. With the talk done, Hiruzen began interacting with others in the guidance hall. A few hours later, it was time for the guidance hall to be inaugurated. Since Hiruzen had decided to make it a big event, he invited a lot of people. Several hundred veteran ninjas appeared in the courtyard. Thousands of young ninjas appeared as well, despite not getting any official invite. They stayed away from the courtyard, watching the inauguration from a distance. As a result, the guidance hall was completely surrounded by them, and their excited chatter filled the air. A few minutes before the inauguration, the elders and the clan leaders arrived. No one wanted to miss such an event. Despite so many famous personalities in the guidance hall, the one who was discussed the most was Fujin, as he was the one who got the proposal passed. Katsuhiro also became a topic for discussion. Some people tried to look for him but couldn't find him. Due to the rumors Fujin's clones mercilessly spread, his blood pressure issues worsened, and he even developed more heart conditions. He decided to stay away from the inauguration, worried that his blood pressure might get out of control once again. Needless to say, the one who was the most pleased wasn't Fujin, but rather Hiruzen. He thought, "I am glad I decided to make it a huge event instead of keeping the celebrations subdued. Fujin is finally becoming more reputed in the village. All we need now is a small battle where he can establish his martial might and become someone who others can look up to, just like Kakashi. Once that is done, I can start planning my retirement." Though keeping the celebrations subdued might have kept the information from enemy villages for a bit longer, it wouldn't have made much difference in the long run. After all, the guidance hall isn't something we can keep hidden. Everyone would know about it in a month. By comparison, this gain is much better. The inauguration ceremony was a hit. It would become the talk of the village for several days. As soon as the ceremony was over, several veteran ninjas began registering themselves as the guide. Fujin wasn't interested in any further process. He snuck away when no one was paying attention and returned home. Only Hiruzen noticed Fujin leaving from the corner of his eye and thought, "Looks like he isn't a fan of such gatherings." Fujin appeared in front of his house and stretched his neck while walking inside and thinking, "Man, that was boring. I can't recall the last time I participated in any gathering. Come to think of it, I don't think I have participated in any in this life. The ones I did while in Anbu usually involved killing someone." Fujin. "Sensei." Before he could enter his home, Naruto and Fujin's 5 students came running towards him. He turned his head to look at them. Naruto was at the forefront. He stopped in front of Fujin and asked, "Fujin, did you hear about the new guidance hall? It's so cool. Anyone can go there and learn jutsus." Fujin nodded and asked, "Yeah, what of it?" Naruto immediately said, "I will visit there and learn a lot of cool jutsus. That'll show Sasuke who is the better ninja. And Sakura will finally see that I'm much better than Sasuke." Sayaka said, "Sensei, we were planning to this." She stopped speaking after looking at Fujin's expression. However, the one who was the most bothered by Fujin's expression was Naruto. Fujin was looking at him like he was the greatest idiot in the entire world. He awkwardly asked, "Why are you looking at me like this?" Instead of answering, Fujin asked him in return, "Why do you think I am?" Naruto became annoyed and said, "Hey, I'm a ninja now. I even fought against one of the 7 ninja swordsmen of the mist. Don't keep treating me like an idiot," Fujin taunted. "Are you sure you are a ninja? Show me one ninja who has a sensei who can use 1,000 jutsus and still plans to spend money to learn from ninjas who are much less talented than him." Naruto was dumbfounded by Fujin's reply. His eyes grew wide and he held his head in shame and shouted, "I didn't think of that." Fujin's students looked at him with pity. Fujin hadn't held back any words. Before Naruto could recover, Fujin grabbed him by the back of his neck and lifted him like a cat. "Hey, what are you doing? What's this wind?" Fujin's students watched as Naruto was engulfed in some kind of wind. All 6 of them heard, "Go find Kakashi and pester him to teach you jutsus instead of doing something so foolish." With a flick of his wrist, Fujin sent Naruto flying in the air. Fujin's students saw Naruto flying through the sky while hearing his shocked screams. Several people in Konoha looked above as they heard a scream. They were shocked to see Naruto flying over their heads. While the village was busy with talks of the guidance hall, a silver-haired ninja was standing silently in front of the memorial stone. Suddenly, he heard a scream and turned around. Confusion appeared on his face as he muttered, "What the hell?" Seconds later, Naruto fell in front of him. The winds surrounding him cushioned his fall and immediately dissipated. Even so, the poor boy was scared due to the unexpected trip. To his surprise, he saw Kakashi in front of him and asked, "Kakashi-sensei?" Kakashi asked, "Naruto, how did you come flying here?" Naruto didn't register his question and instead recalled Fujin's words. He quickly ran towards Kakashi and said, "Kakashi-sensei, please teach me more cool jutsus." Kakashi watched with a deadpan expression as Naruto ignored his question and began pestering him non-stop. Back at Fujin's house, his students asked with a stunned expression, "What was that?" Fujin casually replied, "A new jutsu that I came up with. It's quite handy for throwing others away. Now, which one of you wanted to learn at the guidance hall with empty pockets? I'll help you get there in no time." Immediately, all his 5 students shook their heads. While it seemed fun, none of them wanted to be sent flying like Naruto. Fujin replied, "Good. Get back to your training." Chapter 595, Anko's Annoyance. For the next week, almost all ninjas in Konoha were discussing the guidance hall. Several veteran ninjas who were enthusiastic to teach the younger generation signed up. At the same time, nearly every young ninja from the civilian background expressed interest in getting their guidance. It wasn't just Konoha ninjas who were trying to get into the guidance hall. Spies placed by the other villages wanted to know everything about the guidance hall as well. One of those spies had successfully managed to secure guidance under a jounin. Even though nothing could be seen on his face, Kabuto was extremely serious internally. He wondered, Konoha made such a huge move just before Orochimaru-sama would make his move. It's almost like they are preparing for a war. Could it be that our plans have been leaked? But how? Kabuto analyzed for a bit before concluding, no, if they knew about our plans, then they wouldn't have made such a show and would have instead prepared in the dark. There was no reason to make the youngsters pay to get guidance. Instead, they should have just guided talented ninjas secretly and we wouldn't have known. Still, this is a very good method. Now, several hundred ninjas will master 1 or 2 additional jutsus by the time our invasion starts. Their strength will be slightly higher than what we calculated initially. This makes matters more complicated considering how outnumbered we will be. Sai, all will depend on whether Orochimaru-sama is able to kill the 3rd Hokage quickly enough. Once the high-level battle is won, the numerical disadvantage will be meaningless. He adjusted his spectacles while looking around and thinking, Suzuki Fujin. There is very little information available about him. Even though everyone in the village is discussing him, the normal ninjas don't know anything about him. Everything about him is just a rumor. Even I thought that it was just Konoha's tactic of raising his reputation. To think that he is someone who killed Juzo and escaped from Kasama. If Orochimaru-sama hadn't informed me, I'd have been completely oblivious to his real strength as well. We will have to treat him as someone at the same level as Hatake Kakashi and Might Guy. Considering that he specializes in eliminating weaker ninjas at a rapid speed, he can't be left unchecked during the war. Under normal circumstances, it'd have been best if we eliminated him before the war began. However, Kabuto gulped his saliva as sweat rolled down from his forehead. Seeing his expression, the Jounin asked, "Kid, are you understanding? If you have any doubts, ask me." Kabuto immediately asked a random doubt related to the jutsu the Jounin was teaching them. The Jounin didn't find anything odd and cleared his doubt. As for the reason for Kabuto's reaction, it was rather simple. After understanding Fujin's threat, Kabuto immediately gathered all information related to Fujin. He was already aware that Fujin lived on the outskirts of the village. It created some ideas in his mind, making him wonder whether he or Orochimaru could sneak attack Fujin in his house and eliminate him before Hiruzen could react. As a result, he went to check Fujin's house and casually passed by his compound, pretending that he was going somewhere. What he witnessed made him decide on the spot to never go anywhere close to Fujin's house. It still gave him the creeps whenever he recalled that sight. As the Jounin went back to explaining, Kabuto thought, which lunatic inscribed tens of thousands of seals on that little compound? I initially thought that it was a trap. However, no one is blind enough to walk into that trap. Whoever inscribed those seals is definitely a lunatic. Even if I and Orochimaru attacked his house, he'll easily be able to stall us until the reinforcements arrive. As for the one whom Kabuto was cursing, he was currently in Hiruzen's office along with 3 other ninjas. Hiruzen looked at Fujin, Ibiki, Anko, and Hayate and said, "The next Chunin exams will start soon. Ibiki, you'll be the proctor of the first round. Fujin, you'll be the proctor of the second round. Anko will assist you. Hayate, you'll be the proctor of the last round. Any questions?" All the ninjas shook their heads. Hiruzen had already informed Anko about his decision to make Fujin the proctor for this particular exam. On hearing his reasoning, she didn't have any complaints. She was also interested in seeing the one who everyone was talking about lately. Hiruzen said, "Good. You can discuss among yourselves how to conduct the exams. If you want to make any changes to the schedule, let me know within the next 3 days." Everyone nodded and left. As they exited Hiruzen's office, Ibiki looked at Fujin meaningfully and said, "I didn't expect that you'd be assigned as a proctor, Fujin." "Is your training completed?" Fujin chuckled and said, "It's good to see you again as well, Ibiki. I guess a little vacation won't hurt. Right, Anko?" A tick mark appeared on her forehead as Fujin's remark implied that he didn't intend to do much work and would treat the 5 days as a vacation. She muttered, "For someone who recently made such a huge change, I expected you to come up with something innovative for the Chunin exams as well." Fujin waved his hand dismissively and said, "That's too much work for too little returns. You can't compare it with the guidance hall. Besides, if I made any changes, I doubt anyone would reach the 3rd round. Poor Hayate might lose his job." Hayate coughed as he looked at Fujin and thought, so he was Yugao's Anbu captain. "She still speaks very highly of him." He replied, "It's fine. I'll settle for a sword fight with you if that happens." Fujin looked at Hayate with a deadpan expression and replied, "I was kidding." "Do you think Lord Hawkage would allow no one to qualify for the last round? The last round is pretty much why the Chunin exams are conducted." Hayate coughed awkwardly and replied, "I was kidding as well." Fujin replied with a teasing tone, "Sure didn't sound like it. Anyway, are you planning any radical changes to your round, Ibiki?" Ibiki replied, "Nothing that'll affect the schedule. You can plan accordingly." Fujin said, "All right, I'll see you later then." Fujin looked at Anko and said with a chuckle, "I'll be in your care then, Anko." More tick marks appeared on Anko's forehead as she said, "Follow me, I'll show you everything about the second round." The two of them flickered towards the forest of death. En route, Anko asked, "Are you really not planning to make any changes?" Fujin replied, "Yup, if you want to make any, feel free to do so. The exam will be just like how it was conducted the previous year. The only difference will be that I'll be addressing the genins." Anko muttered, "What a bummer. I was hoping to see something interesting." Fujin replied with a deadpan expression, "Don't get your hopes up high for no reason. Besides, how much fun can you even have from the genins? Send a couple of your snakes and enjoy their reactions to pass the time." Anko immediately replied, "I did that last time. It became boring after a few hours." Fujin chuckled and replied, "I should have guessed." They reached the central tower in the Forest of Death. Anko said, "As you know, this will be our base for the exam. I'll first introduce you to all the instructors here and show you all the arrangements." Fujin nodded and followed. Anko first called everyone in the tower together and introduced them to Fujin. Fujin already knew most of them as it hadn't been too long since he took the exam. There were only a few new faces. Of course, even if he remembered their faces, he didn't remember any of their names nor knew their abilities. After meeting everyone, Anko brought Fujin to the monitoring room. There were several displays in that room. Anko said, "There are several security cameras placed in the forest. We can use them to monitor the situation. Of course, this is still very limited. The beasts in the forest regularly break them, and any ninja can easily avoid or destroy them without arousing any suspicions. The only cameras you can count on are the ones in the building." Fujin replied, I didn't expect that there would be cameras in the forest." "But yeah, even genins would avoid them. It is sort of pointless. Only someone who is very cocky will arouse suspicion." Anko chuckled and said, "You don't know how many ninjas become cocky." Fujin shrugged and replied, "It's hard to say when they die too soon." Fujin's reply immediately made Anko recall the rumors about Fujin. She turned around and looked at him, only to find Fujin staring at her. Seeing where his gaze was, a tick mark appeared on her forehead once again. Chapter 596, Anbu Captain. Seeing Fujin's gaze, Anko became annoyed once again. She snorted and said, "First, you refused to make any innovative changes to the Chunin exams, and now you are acting like a pervert. Aren't you too young for this?" After hearing all the rumors about Fujin, Anko was very curious about him. She had asked several people in her friend circle about him as his name kept coming up in conversations. However, no one knew much about him. Only Ibiki seemed to know a few things, but he didn't say much. Unfortunately, she had only been disappointed due to her sky-high expectations. Fujin raised his right eyebrow and turned his gaze towards Anko's eyes while saying, "Pervert, I'm not the one wearing a metal mesh and showing off. Besides, I was looking at the back of your neck, or more specifically, that little tattoo." Anko was annoyed by his first sentence but was soon surprised. She wondered, he is looking at my cursed seal. But why? Wait, didn't the rumors also say that he is a grandmaster? Fujin rested his right elbow on his left palm and massaged his chin with his right hand, making him appear to be in deep thought. His gaze returned to her neck as he continued, "I initially thought it was just some sort of tattoo. However, on looking closely, it looks like an incredibly high-level seal. And from the dark aura it gives, it definitely doesn't look like something that is beneficial for you. I wonder what it is." His gaze turned back to her eyes as he said, "As for your last question, I'm 16, not 6. Grow up." Had it been his first life, Fujin would have definitely mentioned that her age was 50% higher than his, implying that she was too old. Thankfully, the experience of 2 lifetimes had made him smart enough to not make meaningless statements like that and needlessly invoke a lady's wrath. Unlike Fujin, Anko's emotions were a mess. Even after a few seconds, she couldn't make up her mind as to what to think. She cursed this brat. Why is he so difficult to talk to? First, he implies that I'm a pervert. Then he expresses concern about the cursed seal. And finally, he says that he is 16 and not 6, implying that he is of the age to do something like that. Seriously, what the hell is up with this kid? The normally outspoken and brash Anko was lost for words. Fortunately for her, there wasn't anyone else in the room apart from Fujin to witness her in that state. Meanwhile, Fujin wondered, why does it look like she is going to experience a seizure? I asked her a rather simple question. Fujin asked again, well, what is that seal? Can I take a look at it? Fujin's question snapped Anko out of her complex thoughts. She shook her head and covered the seal while saying, no, it is a memory of the past. Lord Hokage and Jiraiya-sama have sealed the seal, so it isn't a worry. To her surprise, Fujin looked to be in deep thought once again. After a few seconds, he muttered, a seal that even Grandpa and the Toad Sage couldn't remove and had to resort to sealing. Now I'm even more curious about its origin. He looked back at Anko and said, I have been studying quite a few weird seals lately. If you want to remove the seal, perhaps I can have a look at it. Who knows if you might get lucky. Despite Fujin's kind offer, Anko shook her head and answered, sorry, some other time. Fujin sighed and replied, well, your choice. Let me know if you change your mind sometime in the future. Anyway, what else is left to learn about the second round? He thought. Looks like she is uncomfortable talking about the curse seal. Understandable. Still, it's a shame that I can't study Orochimaru's curse seal. Oh well, there will be more opportunities in the future even if she doesn't agree. Anko was thankful that Fujin changed the subject. She quickly began informing him about the usual protocols. After explaining everything, she added, even though the forest of death can cause some deaths, we have to ensure that the deaths aren't too high. If too many die, then other villages will refuse to send their talented genins to Chunin exams. In addition, they might target our genins when they visit their villages for Chunin exams. While we don't need to do anything initially if too many die, then we will need to act in the dark to prevent more deaths. Fujin was surprised and muttered, that's surprising, but on second thought it makes sense. Even more so this year when there are so many children of the clan leaders. Anko smirked and said, yes, they'll all be in your care, Proctor. Fujin just sighed like Hiruzen and said, I guess so. I'll be counting on you to ensure that everything is fine. I'll see you later, Anko. Fujin turned around and disappeared from the tower, leaving a shocked Anko. She muttered in disbelief, did he push that work onto me as well? Fortunately or unfortunately, there was no one to listen to her. Unlike his fake sigh, Fujin wasn't worried. After all, he knew the future. As he flickered towards his house, he thought if I want to, I can just sit back and enjoy the show. Orochimaru won't attack the tower and no one of importance will die. That said, that would be a waste of a good opportunity. And opportunities like these are hard to come by. Fujin landed in front of his house. To his surprise, he saw two ninjas who wore Anbu masks sitting in front of his door. Both immediately looked towards Fujin. Fujin chuckled and said, well, now that's a pleasant surprise. Were you finally promoted? The two immediately got up and removed their masks. With a smile on his face, the first guy nodded and said, yup, though I guess I need to be thankful to you for pulling the strings from behind. Fujin replied, I wouldn't have pulled the strings if you weren't ready, so congrats, you should be proud of becoming an Anbu captain at just 16. Not many have achieved that, and almost all who did became elite jounins later. The second guy also smiled and said, it's good to see you again after a long time, Fujin. Fujin nodded and said, nice to see you after as well, Tatsuya. Come on in, it's been a while since either of you visited. The two nodded and entered. Both were rather old acquaintances of Fujin. The one who became an Anbu captain was Handa Bunjiro, an orphan whom Fujin had guided when he was still in the academy and later joined Fujin's Anbu squad. The other person was Yuzuki Tatsuya, someone who grew up in the same orphanage as Fujin. He had joined the Anbu as well, though he was still some distance away from becoming an Anbu captain. Fujin had been very impressed with Bunjiro's talent and work ethic. He was surprised to see him enter the Anbu just 2 years after he graduated. And now, he managed to become an Anbu captain in less than 3 years after becoming an Anbu. Even though Fujin had interfered, and asked Eagle to give Bunjiro the promotion even though Fujin had interfered, and asked Eagle to give Bunjiro the promotion mission earlier than he would have normally. Bunjiro's progress was still very fast. After all, the fact that Bunjiro had completed the promotion mission successfully proved his ability. As they sat on the sofa, Bunjiro said, "I might have become an Anbu captain, but I still can't compare with you, captain. You became a council member and are now taking care of so many orphans. If we had an environment like this growing up, we would have aced the academy." Tatsuya chuckled and asked, "Are you forgetting that we still aced the graduation exams? Otherwise, we wouldn't have been assigned to sensei." Bunjiro replied, "Ah, I almost forgot, but you know what I mean. You have seen how good these kids are." "As expected of you, Captain." Tatsuya nodded. The orphans in Fujin's compound were abnormally good. Fujin just looked at them and wondered how Danzo would react if he learnt that all the credit for his hard work of finding talented children, making them orphans, kidnapping them, and training them to build strong basics, was being given to me. Though Fujin didn't think Danzo would show much of a reaction, he could imagine how offended Danzo would be internally. He replied, "I didn't do much. The kids are just too talented. Anyway, I'm sure you two are curious why I asked you two to come here after Bunjiro gets promoted, right?" The two immediately nodded. Fujin hadn't given them any explanation so far. They just followed his instructions as they owed and respected him a lot. Chapter 597, Playing Hot Potato. Fujin said, "Well, I have a request for you too. It's a rather simple one, but at the same time it could be huge depending on how you see it." Tatsuya and Bunjiro were intrigued. They listened carefully to his words. A few months ago, when Fujin realized that he would have to increase his prestige in Konoha to avoid any political troubles if something happened to Hiruzen, Fujin had two options. The one he chose to act on was the proposal of the Guidance Hall. It had been as successful as Fujin had hoped. The other option Fujin had was to create a faction equivalent to the clans in Konoha. Hiruzen had already laid a foundation for Fujin by giving him talented orphans who were trained by the root and were being trained to join the Anbu. However, Fujin lacked the mid- and high-level combat that the clans had. Most major clans had around a dozen jounins, a few dozen chunins, over 100 genins, and 1 to 3 elite jounins. Fujin could match the highest level of combat, but he had no one at jounin level. The Kiri orphans could all be considered as genins thanks to the training by Root and Anbu. Only a handful, like some of Fujin's students, could barely be considered as chunins. However, they had zero battle experience. When Fujin had thought about recruiting high-level ninjas, the first name that came to his mind wasn't Renjiro or Hoka, two elite jounin-level ninjas whom Fujin was very close to. Instead, it was Bunjiro. The reason for this was rather simple. Both Renjiro and Hoka had their respective clans. They couldn't look after the orphans in Fujin's compounds. Hoka deciding to remove the seal had given Fujin an opportunity to recruit him, but that was a recent development, and there was still some time for that to happen. Even others whom Fujin could ask for a favor like Teru, Hana, Keen, Tsuyoshi, and Fumito were all from the clans. The only one who wasn't was Yugao. However, she wasn't someone whom he could call either for this purpose. As a result, Bunjiro and, by extension, Tatsuya were his only options. Though both were quite good for their age and did well beyond what Fujin imagined they would achieve when he had helped them on a whim, it was not enough to create anything comparable to a clan's high-level force. That was why Fujin focused more on the Guidance Hall while silently making arrangements with the Anbu commander to ensure that Bunjiro wouldn't have to wait for several years before being allowed to take the promotion mission. Fujin continued, "I have been looking to have someone help me with the orphans. It was why I pushed Eagle to allow you to take the promotion mission and made him station you here." Bunjiro became confused. He asked, "What do you mean? Won't we help you here from now onwards as we will be stationed here?" Fujin shook his head and answered, "That's not the same. Even though Lord Hawkage has arranged for several Anbu squads to stay here, they aren't orphans and have their own families. So they don't understand it exactly. What I want from you two is to move into the compounds permanently, or well, at least until you two decide to start your respective families. This way, I won't have to be worried about something happening here when I'm out of the village. Bunjiro and Tatsuya's eyes widened. They realized that Fujin wanted them to move from the rooms they were assigned by the academy to the rooms in his compound. That was different as compared to the other Anbu who stayed there temporarily and worked in shifts. Even so, both nodded immediately with a smile and excitement on their faces. Bunjiro said, "I'll be honored to stay here." Tatsuya added, "Same here. It'll be rather fun to guide the young ones here." Fujin smiled as well and said, "Good. There are several living quarters in the compounds. Feel free to choose the ones you like the most." Both nodded. They talked for some time to catch up on recent events in their lives before leaving to choose the rooms to move into. While Fujin was recruiting the first official ninjas to his compounds, a couple of ninjas were busy in a training ground. A young blonde ninja weaved hand signs and grabbed a couple of shurikens while shouting, "Wind Release, Gale Palm Jutsu." He threw the shurikens on the target in front of him. Wind appeared behind the shurikens, making them fly towards the target at several times their speed. However, he still muttered, "Man, that's still not as fast as Kakashi-sensei. It looks like it may take a while." Naruto stopped practicing and began running towards Kakashi, who was observing his training from some distance away. As he ran, he shouted, "Kakashi-sensei, I have mastered the Gale Palm Jutsu. Please teach me another one." Kakashi's right eye twitched as he sighed and wondered in sadness, "Why did I agree to teach him and spend all my time with him? I haven't been able to read my favorite Ika Ika Paradise as much as I want for the last week." That day, when Fujin threw Naruto at Kakashi, Naruto bothered Kakashi endlessly until Kakashi relented and agreed. He decided to teach Naruto the Gale Palm Jutsu as it went well with Naruto's current skill set. Unfortunately for him, Naruto, whose nature had subtly changed due to Fujin's influence, had become persistent in asking Kakashi's guidance. "Kakashi-sensei, which jutsu should I learn next?" Naruto asked again as he reached Kakashi. Kakashi sighed and said, "Naruto, you still haven't mastered the Gale Palm Jutsu. Your mastery is nowhere near my level. It is more important for you to master the jutsus you know than to know more jutsus." Naruto looked at Kakashi suspiciously and argued, "But sensei, you know 1,000 jutsus." Knowing that Naruto would continue bothering him, Kakashi explained, "I know 1,000 jutsus because I could copy them with my Sharingan. If you try to copy me and learn too many jutsus, then you'll never become a strong ninja and you'll never be able to become the Hokage. For now, you have learnt enough jutsus. Focus on improving your body flicker, Great Breakthrough and Gale Palm jutsus. Only after you completely master these jutsus should you start learning new jutsus." Naruto was still suspicious, but he didn't have any good points to argue against Kakashi's logic. He said in a dejected tone, "All right, sensei, I will work on these jutsus." What Kakashi didn't say and only thought was, even though he doesn't have a Sharingan, he has a ridiculous amount of chakra. If I tell him the shadow clone trick, he'll be able to master the jutsus very quickly. Unfortunately, Naruto has no self-control. If I tell him about it, he'll use it until he develops some mental issues. There is also the threat of 9 tails sealed within him. Not to mention, if I tell him that trick, he'll bother me relentlessly for years until I teach him 1,000 jutsus. Kakashi didn't dare to tell Naruto about that trick. The current Naruto wasn't mature enough to use it responsibly. However, there was one thing that he planned on telling Naruto. He continued, also. As Kakashi spoke, he recalled the events of the day when Naruto came flying at him. After an endless pestering, Kakashi began teaching him. While Naruto was practicing, Kakashi asked curiously, "By the way, how did you come flying here, Naruto?" Naruto became embarrassed and flustered on hearing that question. He answered while looking away, "Fujin threw me." Kakashi raised an eyebrow and asked, "Through you? Why?" Naruto replied with even more embarrassment, "I was planning to visit the guidance hall and told him. He scolded me for thinking about that when I have a sensei who knows 1,000 jutsus much better than anyone teaching there and threw me over here." Since Fujin hadn't asked Naruto to keep it a secret this time, he didn't. A deadpan expression appeared on Kakashi's face as he thought, "I knew it. That bastard hates to see me be happy." Back to the present, Kakashi continued, "Also, wind release isn't my expertise. Even though I can use those jutsus, I am not very good at them. That's why I said that you should be able to perform them at least as well as I can." Naruto was surprised. He asked in a stunned expression, "You call that being not very good?" He thought, "That's unbelievable. Kakashi Sensei's wind jutsus are several times stronger than mine." Kakashi nodded and said, "You are still new at learning them. In a year or two you'll realize it, so I can't guide you much." A smile appeared on Kakashi's face as he quickly added, "Fortunately, our village has someone who is probably the best at wind release in the world." Chapter 598, The Best Wind Ninja. Fortunately, our village has someone who is probably the best at wind release in the world. Naruto immediately became excited and exclaimed, "Really? Who is it?" Kakashi continued smiling and said, "It's none other than Fujin." "What? Big brother Fujin is the best at wind release in the entire world?" To say Naruto was shocked was an understatement. Until a few months ago, he didn't even know that Fujin had a cool nickname. And now suddenly, Kakashi dropped this bomb. Kakashi just nodded and coolly said, "Yes, he is." At the same time, Kakashi thought, though that is more due to the fact that there are no strong wind users in the world, as Sunagakure themselves are heavily lacking in this aspect. If Fujin is ignored, then the next best ones will be Elder Danzo and Lord Hawkage. By comparison, the Raikage specializes in lightning release and is very strong. For earth release, it is difficult for anyone to compete with the Tsuchikage. For fire release, Lord Hawkage could probably set fire to the entire Land of Fire, while the Land of Water has several formidable ninjas who specialize in water release. Of course, there is no reason to tell Naruto this. Naruto thought, "I didn't know Big Brother Fujin was so good. No wonder he decided to teach me wind jutsus. Now that I think about it, he can do some crazy things with wind. I still remember how he could restrain me with just a snap of his fingers." Seeing Naruto in thought, Kakashi coaxed, "For now, focus on mastering those 3 jutsus. Once you master them, you can ask Fujin to teach you more wind jutsus." Wait." Kakashi pretended to be in deep thought. Naruto paid attention carefully. Suddenly, Kakashi said, "You know, now that I have thought about it more, I think it'll be better for you to go to him as soon as you can and ask for his guidance. He might know some jutsus that are more suitable for you. It'll save some time." Excitement appeared in Naruto's eyes. He immediately said, "All right, I'll go ask him, believe it." Without waiting for Kakashi's reply, Naruto began running. Kakashi looked at his back and muttered, "Now that's more like it. I should have done this on the very first day. It would be fun to see Fujin's reaction when Naruto approaches him. Unfortunately, his house gives me creeps. I won't be able to spy in secret." With Naruto gone, Kakashi opened his book and walked away while reading it. A few minutes later, Kakashi had become quite engrossed in that book when he suddenly felt something. He looked behind him. His right eye widened as he saw Naruto flying towards him once again while shouting, "Kakashi-sensei, wait!" Seconds later, Naruto crashed in front of Kakashi. He quickly got up as Kakashi asked, "Why are you back?" "Didn't I tell you to ask for his guidance?" With a grin on his face, Naruto answered, "I did. He praised me saying that I'm learning the right jutsus and added that I'm on the right track. He told me to master those 3 jutsus as well and told me to use Gale Palm Jutsu and Projectile Control Jutsu together so that others won't be able to dodge my weapons easily." Kakashi nodded and said, "That makes sense. Still, why are you here?" Naruto's grin disappeared and he looked to be in a bit of panic. He hurriedly said, "Big Brother Fujin pointed out a fatal flaw. He said that even though I am on the right track with Wind Jutsu, A ninja shouldn't focus entirely on one element. He said that wind jutsus are weak against fire jutsus. So Sasuke will always defeat me as he knows fire jutsus. To counter fire jutsus, Fujin said that I should learn a water or earth jutsu. Fujin said that you are much better at earth and water release than him, and that you are one of the best in the world. However, Fujin said that I can only learn one more jutsu at the same time. So please teach me one defensive water or earth jutsu, sensei. I will learn it and beat Sasuke. Kakashi looked at Naruto with a dumbfounded expression. He cursed, that shameless brat. This is the worst excuse I have ever heard. Couldn't he teach Naruto Earth Wall? How do I send him away now? Also, how does he know about my location? The last time was understandable as I felt a chakra field scanning me and I hadn't masked my chakra. But this time, I hid my chakra signature. So how did he know? Did he plant a seal on me? Or did Lord Hawkage lend him that crystal? Even though Kakashi's plan was good, what he didn't know was that Fujin had already anticipated this move when he decided to manipulate Naruto into pestering Kakashi. If anything, he was surprised that Kakashi took so long. As a result, Fujin had already prepared a long list of reasons to send Naruto back to Kakashi. He had just used the first one. While someone like Kakashi could argue against Fujin's reasons, Naruto couldn't. On the contrary, Fujin knew exactly what to say to convince Naruto. Of course, Fujin didn't intend to completely abandon Naruto. He planned to teach him a very overpowered trick that would be very suitable for him. However, it wasn't the right time yet. Sensei, Naruto's call snapped Kakashi out of his thoughts. Kakashi immediately replied, Naruto, learning 4 jutsus at the same time at your age isn't good. For N. Naruto cut him off and argued, but Fujin said that it'll be fine. Kakashi showed a serious expression and said, even though I sent you to take his guidance, don't forget that I'm your sensei. Even mastering 3 jutsus at a time isn't a very good idea, let alone 4. Focus on mastering those 3 jutsus. If you pester me again, we will stop ninjutsu training and go back to physical training. Naruto immediately shivered on recalling Kakashi's deadly training regime. He didn't want to go through it again. He quickly said, all right, sensei, I'll master them in no time, believe it. He quickly ran away. Kakashi let out a tired sigh and muttered to himself, Suzuki Fujin, I underestimated him. Anyway, it looks like my decision to send these 3 to the Chunin exams is correct. If they pass and become Chunins, they won't be my responsibility officially. Though if they don't, Kakashi had a terrible headache. He quickly began making plans to send Naruto back to Fujin somehow. Back in Fujin's compound, his 5 students were standing on a balcony while looking towards the sky. Hikari muttered, will Naruto be all right? Sensei sent him flying for the 2nd time. This time, the 5 of them weren't next to Naruto when Fujin sent him flying. Instead, they were just doing their own things when they heard his scream and looked at the skies. Yuji giggled and said, he should be fine. He said earlier that the fall didn't hurt him due to the winds. However, his scream was hilarious. I want to hear not again once more. Heh. Sayaka placed her hand on Yuji's shoulder and said with a smirk, if you continue being mischievous, Sensei might throw you next. Immediately, Yuji became nervous and said, hey, I don't create any trouble like Naruto. I'm smart enough to know that I shouldn't annoy Sensei. Besides, what's up with Sensei's wind release? It is so different from any other ninja's wind release. Takeshi nodded and said, yes, it almost feels like a Kekkei Genkai. However, Sensei said that he doesn't have any Kekkei Genkai. No one else says that Sensei has a Kekkei Genkai either. Sayaka added, I was intrigued as well. That's why I did some digging. Her words immediately gained the attention of the remaining kids. As the eldest and the one who led their small squad, her words held slightly more weight than others. Hikari quickly asked, what did you find? Sayaka said, it's difficult to find anything concrete. Instead, I looked at other top-tier ninjas. I discovered that nearly all top-level ninjas can use nature manipulation in a way that almost makes it seem like a Kekkei Genkai. For instance, The third Tsuchikage can fly using Earth Release. He can also make other objects heavier and lighter with Earth Release. The fourth Reikage can create an armor of lightning with Lightning Release. Apparently, no attack can pierce through that armor, and he can move at the speed of lightning. So, Sensei's Wind Release may have reached a similar level. That is why it is so different as compared to our Anbu instructor's Wind Release. Yuji exclaimed in surprise, "You mean that our sensei is at the same level as the Reikage and Tsuchikage?" Sayaka answered, "I can't say for sure. The only thing I can say is that Sensei's Wind Release is likely at that level. In a way, it is actually cooler than Kekkei Genkai as it is far more versatile and rare. As for whether he can fight against them, it's hard to say for someone like me." Sayaka's explanation made sense. The four kids nodded. Even though they weren't sure, their respect for Fujin increased by a few levels. Chapter 599, How Long Will You Keep Playing? Thanks to Kakashi's warning, Naruto no longer bothered him and focused on mastering the three jutsus. Of course, that didn't mean that Kakashi was completely free. He still had to lead Team 7 on their missions. With Naruto and Sasuke becoming increasingly competitive, his days weren't peaceful by any means. It was quite a contrast from Fujin, who had relieved himself from nearly every duty and focused on his training. Even in his absence, his students focused on mastering their jutsus earnestly. In one of the many training grounds in Konoha, loud sounds were constantly being heard. Even the ground shook frequently, as if an earthquake had hit the training ground. If someone passed by, they would think that some sort of calamity was happening. If they were to check, they'd be shocked to see that all the sounds and shaking were happening due to clashes of fists and legs. Standing some distance away, Tenten sighed and said, "Every time I see them fighting, I find it hard to believe that ninjas can fight in this manner. If it was me, my hands and legs would long be injured." Lee nodded and said, "They are even more fierce today. As expected of Guy Sensei and Fujin-san," Neji added, "it looks like they aren't holding back this time." Unlike a year ago, Guy's students could now follow Fujin's and Guy's movements. In the training ground, Fujin's and Guy's fists clashed once again before they retreated. Both their breathing was heavy. Guy said, "Not bad. You are very enthusiastic today, Fujin. Your stamina with the strong fist style is several times higher than when you first used it. As expected as someone so youthful." Fujin thought, "Yeah, but looks like forcing him to open the gates with just my taijutsu is still impossible." "Oh well, that's not a surprise." Fujin chuckled and said, "I haven't been in a good fight for some time. Guy, how many gates can you open without putting much of a strain on your body?" Guy was surprised by Fujin's question. It was the first time Fujin had asked something like that. It also was the first time when Fujin had pushed him this much despite them having sparred so many times. He wondered, is he preparing for something? Guy answered, 5. If I open the 6th, I'll need to rest for some time. Fujin replied, "That's impressive. Lord Hawkage recently gave me a task and I don't want to be caught lacking." "Are you fine with taking a spar a notch higher?" Guy grinned and said, "Of course, let your youth explode." Fujin grinned as well and said, "I won't be holding back." At the very next moment, a huge blast of wind was launched behind Fujin. Neji, Lee, and Tenten, who were standing some distance behind Fujin, were caught off guard and hit by the high-speed winds. All were launched behind for a few meters but managed to land on their feet. Lee cursed, "What the hell was that?" Needless to say, the most surprised one was Guy. Even before the winds hit his students, Fujin's fist was right in front of his face. He barely managed to block the punch with his arms but was sent flying due to Fujin's momentum. Guy quickly flipped in the air and landed on a tree before jumping back on the ground. Guy quickly flipped in the air and landed on a tree before jumping back on the ground. As for the tree, it broke into two due to his force. Despite being hit, Guy had a grin on his face as he thought, so this is Fujin's real speed, as expected of someone who specializes in wind release. It's the same speed as mine when I open the gate of life. How exciting! I can't lag behind. Gate of opening, open. Fujin looked at Guy opening 3 gates in a row and thought with a grin on his face, now, this should be a good warm-up for Orochimaru. Grinning, the two raised the intensity of their spar severalfold. Guy's students, whose confidence had grown by leaps and bounds as they were able to see Fujin and Guy's fight clearly, were left dumbfounded as they could no longer follow them. Lee observed carefully and realized, even with the gate of life, Guy-sensei is faster and stronger than I am when I open my gate of limit. Also, how is Fujin-san so fast despite not opening any gates? What is that strange wind that he keeps blasting? Unless I open my inner gates, I won't be able to see their movements. With the winds Fujin was randomly blasting, the trio decided to create a larger distance and moved away. 15 minutes later, Fujin and Guy finally stopped. Both their breathing was heavy and both had several minor injuries on their body. Guy said, "That's very impressive, Fujin. As expected of you," Fujin replied. "You are the one to talk. I don't think there was anyone in the history of this world who could sustain 8 inner gates for so long. I run out of gas in a few minutes." Guy grinned without replying and closed his inner gates. He was about to say when he heard a bird sound and looked above. He said, "Looks like it's time. I'll catch up with you later, Fujin." Fujin took a deep breath and said, "It's fine." With a smile on his face, he added, "Good luck to your students in the Chunin exams." Guy was surprised that Fujin knew about it. He wondered, is the task he spoke about related to the exam? He nodded and left after addressing his students quickly. Fujin disappeared from the training ground as well while thinking, the exams will begin in a week from now. I need to be in my best shape. I haven't had a good fight since I fought Reiga. That said, at my level, getting a good fight is a very rare event. I doubt Orochimaru fought with anyone after his little clash with Itachi either. Oh well, this spar with Guy should be enough warm-up. I'll train for another week until the exam begins. As Fujin returned home, another interesting event occurred in Konoha. Naruto and Sakura, who had just returned from their mission, met with Konohamaru's gang. As in the original story, Sakura beat both of them up when Konohamaru asked whether she was Naruto's girlfriend and Naruto agreed. Holding the bump on his head, Konohamaru said, "I don't even think she's human. Did you see how wide her forehead is?" Unfortunately for him, he hadn't bothered lowering his voice. Sakura, who was walking away, froze. She mechanically turned around with an expression that terrified the 4 of them. All 4 began running away as she chased after them. The chase didn't last for long as Konohamaru ran into Kankuro. While Hiruzen held a meeting with the senseis, Kankuro held up Konohamaru. To rescue him, Naruto moved forward, but Kankuro used a chakra thread to make Naruto slip. As he fell, Naruto thought, "What the hell? My foot froze." That's similar to Big Brother Fujin's wind release. Despite the chakra thread, Naruto managed to control himself and didn't entirely fall. He quickly regained his balance and shouted, "Hey, you in the black pig suit, release him now and I'll go easy on you." Unfortunately, that earned him a scolding from Sakura. While she held him, Kankuro threatened to kill Konohamaru and went for a punch. Realizing that it wouldn't be good, Naruto weaved hand seals while cursing, "Bastard." Temari recognized the hand seals and thought, not good. She quickly grabbed her fan. Not wanting to accidentally injure Konohamaru, Naruto didn't throw any weapon and instead just sent a small blast of wind towards Kankuro with Gale Palm Jutsu. However, Temari opened her fan and used it to cover Kankuro, blocking Naruto's attack. The wind blast caused Temari to move behind slightly and made her, Kankuro and Konohamaru feel a breeze. At the same time, a stone hit Kankuro's wrist, stopping his punch and forcing him to let Konohamaru go. Like in the original story, Kankuro tried to fight with Sasuke until Gaara appeared and threatened him. The only difference was that Konohamaru wasn't that disappointed in Naruto and others didn't look down on Naruto. Especially Temari, who was surprised to see a wind jutsu being used. At the same time, Kakashi, Kurenai and Asuma gave their approval for their genins to take part in the Chunin exams. Uruka opposed it but was shut down ruthlessly by Kakashi. A week later, Naruto, Sakura, and Sasuke met outside the academy, ready to participate in the Chunin exams. Meanwhile, two individuals were playing a game of shogi in a tower that was at the center of a deadly forest. One of them was young, the other was middle-aged with a few scars on his face showing his experience. A lady, with dango sticks in her hand, scolded in annoyance. "How long will you keep playing? The genins should be gathering right now." Chapter 600, Cold Winds. "How long are you going to keep playing?" Anko asked in annoyance. She had been pestering Fujin to accompany her to the academy since the morning. However, Fujin had shown no signs of getting up. Instead, he just made a move. Renjiro made his move as well and asked with a chuckle, "What's the rush, Anko-chan? There's still a couple of hours before the first round will be done." Sitting next to him, Hoka added, "Yeah, calm down, Anko. You have been restless since the morning." Since Fujin had nothing to do, he had asked Renjiro and Hoka to accompany him to the tower in the Forest of Death. He just mentioned Hiruzen's worries, and since neither of them had anything to do, they agreed. As a result, Anko was outnumbered 3-1, making her feel frustrated. She said with a flustered expression, "You. All right, keep playing, HMPH." She began walking away when Fujin chuckled and said, "Don't worry, Anko, I have already made the arrangements." Anko was surprised. She wondered, he has been sitting here for the last few hours. What arrangements did he make? Unable to figure it out, she asked. "What arrangements?" Fujin smirked and said, "Pretty cool ones." The other three in the room stared at him with a deadpan expression. However, Fujin showed no intention of explaining anything. Finally, Anko's shoulders drooped as she slumped into a chair and exclaimed tiredly, "I give up." Fujin chuckled once again and continued focusing on the game while chatting with Renjiro and Hoka. Over at the academy, things changed slightly due to Fujin's influence. Luckily, they weren't too drastic. The largest change he had caused was undoubtedly to Team 7. Naruto was considerably stronger by this time than in the original story. He knew several wind jutsus and had better control over his chakra. His confidence was higher as well. In addition, Naruto, Sakura, and Sasuke were all considerably stronger physically, as Kakashi had made their training significantly more difficult. Due to his increased confidence, Naruto didn't challenge Lee when Lee challenged Sasuke. Sasuke fared better in his fight but still got defeated humiliatingly and would have been thrashed if Guy's summon didn't stop the fight. The trio met Might Guy for the first time as well and were shocked due to his eyebrows and speed. Their interactions after entering the exam hall were more or less the same. They caught up with their old classmates before meeting Kabuto, who gave them some information about the Chunin exams. He also gave them details on a few strong participants like Rock Lee and Gaara. Eventually, he was attacked by the squad from Hidden Sound before Ibiki appeared in the room and began the exam. Ibiki's exam was the same. The first part required the participants to copy smartly. Even though Naruto had become slightly more intelligent, he still couldn't figure out the meaning behind the test and refused to copy Hinata's answers due to fear of being caught and eliminated from the exam. While the exam was underway, Fujin looked towards the clock and muttered, "It's almost time." Anko's ears perked up hearing his words. She got up and asked, "Finally, if we leave now, we might still be able to make it to the academy in time." Fujin nodded and said, Why don't you move ahead, Anko? I'll meet you outside the Forest of Death." Fujin's words confused her. Having interacted with Fujin for the past few days, Anko had realized that Fujin was quite eccentric. She suspiciously asked, "What do you mean?" Fujin chuckled and replied, "Just what I said. Why are you hesitating?" She continued looking at Fujin suspiciously, but he didn't give her any hints. She began walking while cursing under her breath. "If you don't come soon, I swear that I'll make Hokage-sama change the proctor in the middle of the exam." Her words were just loud enough so that the three of them could hear. She left quickly. Renjiro and Hoka looked at Fujin, who nonchalantly continued playing the game. Neither understood what he was up to and Fujin didn't bother explaining. Finally, Hoka couldn't take it and asked, "What game are you playing?" Fujin looked at him curiously, pointed towards the board and answered, "Shogi. Is there an issue with your eyes?" Hoka snorted in annoyance and asked, "Do you want to annoy everyone? You know what I mean." "Why aren't you following her?" Renjiro added. "I know it is only a temporary appointment, but you shouldn't take it so lightly. The old man must have a reason to make you the proctor. It wouldn't be good if something happens and you aren't present." Fujin looked at Hoka and replied, "I don't know. It's kind of fun to annoy others, haha." He turned his gaze towards Renjiro and said, "Don't worry, I have truly made the arrangements. If anyone intends to create trouble, then he or she will be very sorry, unless it is a rank S ninja, of course." Seeing Fujin's confidence, Renjiro said, "It's fine as long as you have the confidence." The two of them continued playing. Meanwhile, Hoka wondered, what arrangements did he make? He activated his Byakugan, but couldn't find anything in the tower or the forest. Anko traveled through the forest of death while still cursing Fujin. She muttered, "This brat. Why do I feel that he still hasn't left the tower? Why did Lord Hawkage appoint such a brat as the proctor? Did he even pass the guidance hall proposal, or did he just get the credit? I can't make any sense of his actions." She exited the forest of death and landed in the area where they would later distribute the scrolls to the participants. Not even a second had passed when she heard, "You should train more seriously, Anko. I have been waiting here for you forever." Anko was surprised. She turned around and saw Fujin sitting in a chair with a book in his hands as if he were on vacation. She exclaimed in surprise, "How did you get here before me? I didn't sense anyone passing by me." Fujin raised an eyebrow and said seriously, "That's all the more reason for you to train more seriously." Anko was dumbfounded by his response. Seconds later, she became irritated and cursed internally. "What the fuck? I can swear that no one passed by me. I don't care what reputation he has as the spectral swordsman, no one can sneak past me so easily. Also, if he ran past me, why doesn't he look tired? There isn't even a drop of sweat on his body." The more she thought, the more irritated she became. Knowing she'd be teased by Fujin if she asked about it, she changed the subject and said, "Whatever, let's go to the academy." Fujin raised his eyebrow again and asked, "Why?" Growing increasingly irritated, Anko asked aggressively, "What do you mean why? Who'll inform them to come here?" Fujin waved his hand dismissively and replied, "I'm not running to them." It's more Fujin waved his hand dismissively and replied, "I'm not running to them. It's more fun to see them come running here." Fujin suddenly disappeared from the chair and appeared very close to Anko, who was growing increasingly annoyed. Anko was surprised as she noticed Fujin observing her very carefully. She asked, "Wah?" Before she could complete her question, Fujin asked with worry on his face, "Are you fine, Anko? I didn't notice it earlier, but you have been looking flustered and agitated all day. Even your cheeks are slightly red. Should I examine you? I'm a trainee medical ninja." Fujin's fake worry once again annoyed Anko. She cursed, "This fucking brat. I want to beat him up so damn much." She snorted and turned around, moving away from Fujin, who just chuckled in response and went back to his chair. Back in the academy, Ibiki put forth the rules of the last question. Hearing that they would never be allowed to take the Chunin exam if they failed to get the answer right, many quit. Only 78 genins were left when Naruto had his little outburst, which raised the confidence of the remaining participants. Ibiki looked at the remaining participants and announced, "Good call. So, everyone who is still here, you've just passed the first exam." Ibiki's announcement shocked every participant still in the room. They quickly asked their queries as Ibiki patiently explained the reasoning behind the test and gave them valuable lessons. With a smile on his face, Ibiki ended by saying, "Part 1 of the Chunin selection exam is now concluded. I'll pray you fight the good fight." Needless to say, everyone was pleased to hear Ibiki's explanation, none more so than Naruto. A smile was present on the faces of all 78 participants when they suddenly felt a chill. Even the examiners keeping an eye on the genins felt a chill. Except for Ibiki, who guessed accurately, every one of them became alert. Naruto muttered, "How did it get so cold all of a sudden, and what's this wind?" Next to him, Hinata shivered slightly due to the cold. Sasuke had a frown on his face as he wondered, "What is this chakra I am feeling?" Even Gaara was surprised as he wondered, "What is this chakra? Why am I getting such a dangerous feeling from it?" Temari, Kankuro, Lee and others in the room wondered the same thing and prepared themselves. No one in the room had ever experienced such a chakra. Even the Chunin examiners got up. Byakugan, Neji activated his Byakugan and was immediately shocked. He wondered, "What the hell? This chakra has invaded the entire room." A ninja wearing the hidden grass headband became amused and looked at the front of the room as he thought, "Such a high-quality yin and wind chakra. Interesting." At the place where he was looking, the winds began flowing and taking a form.